Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a world where childbirth isn't a private hospital moment, but a community event whispered through thin cottage walls, where every birth carries a risk that makes you hold your breath without even realizing it. You stand outside a tiny, timber-framed home on a damp medieval evening, feeling the mud cling to your shoes as though even the ground is trying to keep you from stepping inside. There's a low lantern glow behind the shutters, and you can already hear someone pacing. And yes, in case you're wondering, you probably wouldn't survive this particular century. Most people barely made it past 35. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you don't mind, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing how people all over the world drift off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step forward, push gently on the crooked wooden door, and find yourself entering a cottage filled with warm smoke and nervous whispers. A pot of something vaguely herbal simmers over the hearth, but the scent doesn't quite mask the metallic sharpness of fear. In the corner, the midwife, Ellen, a small woman with hands that seem older than she is, nods at you without looking up. She's been through this hundreds of times, and yet she treats every birth like it could go wrong at any second. Which, in this era, it absolutely could. The mother lies on a straw-stuffed mattress, gripping a worn linen sheet that looks like it's been through more births than anyone here has fingers to count. Her face is flushed, her breaths shallow and fast, and she's trying to stay quiet, not necessarily out of bravery, but because medieval walls are thin and people gossip like it's their only form of entertainment. You move closer, and the floor creaks just enough for her to notice. She offers a tired smile, or maybe it's a grimace. Hard to say. Ellen gestures for you to help her set things in order. First babies are fickle, she mutters, which you quickly learn is medieval midwife code for this might take all night. There's a rhythm to her movements, checking the mother's pulse, adjusting the mattress, asking for warm water that never seems warm enough in a drafty house. Her experience isn't formal. Of course, there are no diplomas on the wall, unless you count the lucky horseshoe nailed above the door. But midwives in this era trained through years of apprenticeship and occasionally questionable trial and error. Historians still argue whether some of their techniques were practical or just inherited superstition dressed up as medical wisdom. You crouch near the hearth to stir the pot of herbs she requested. It smells like chamomile, mugwort, and something else that might just be hay, pretending to be medicine. Medieval households weren't picky if it grew nearby, it went into the remedy. One mainstream historical fact you might appreciate here: midwives were often the most medically knowledgeable people in their village, outclassing even the occasional travelling doctor who might arrive with leeches and a questionable attitude. Ellen, despite her gruffness, knows more about childbirth than any man in a 10-mile radius. She moves to the window and pushes the shutter closed with a firm thud. Keeps the spirits out, she explains. You blink. She means it. To her, childbirth attracts wandering forces, bad luck, jealous souls, or hungry ghosts, depending on who you ask. Whether it's superstition or simply a way to feel in control, you don't question it. After all, the room already feels heavy with anticipation, like even the shadows are holding their breath. A quirky little detail. There's a small carved charm hanging near the mother's head, shaped like a tiny chicken. Not exactly the majestic guardian spirit you were hoping for, but apparently chickens symbolize protection and vitality here. You nod politely at it, unsure if it's supposed to reassure you or the mother. The mother lets out a sharp, low groan, gripping the sheet again. You see her knuckles whiten. The contraction passes, but her breath trembles afterward. You reach for the cup of warm water Ellen prepared earlier and offer it to her. She takes it with shaky hands, mumbling something about hoping the baby arrives before dawn. In this world, dawn isn't just symbolic. It's when the temperature drops, when the fire needs tending, when tiredness becomes dangerous distraction. Ellen circles back to you. She's still early, she says. Plenty of time. Her tone is casual, but you catch the flicker of concern in her eyes. Early labor could last hours or days, and medieval timekeeping is essentially just candles and vibes, so no one really knows what hours means anyway. You stand near the door as the room shifts into an uneasy quiet. Outside, The village continues, with its usual nighttime soundtrack, dogs barking, distant laughter, maybe the clatter of someone dropping a bucket. Life goes on, oblivious to the fragile line being walked in this one-room cottage. Then, unexpectedly, the mother squeezes your wrist. "Thank you," she whispers, "though you're not entirely sure what you've done yet. Maybe your presence alone feels like reassurance. Maybe she's just grateful to have more than two hands helping. Or maybe she's delirious from pain. No judgment either way." Another contraction hits harder, stronger. Ellen immediately adjusts the mother's position, tilting her hips, pressing gently on her lower back. "Good," she murmurs. "Good. You're doing well." It's the kind of thing you say automatically, even when you're not sure it's true. But encouragement is as vital here as clean linens, and far too easier to create on demand. You hold the mother's hand, feeling her grip tighten again. She groans through clenched teeth, and the sound echoes against the wooden beams. The fire pops loudly in the silence, almost as if it's reacting to her pain. You're suddenly very aware that this room is going to be your whole world for a while. The shadows, the heat, the whispers, the uncertainty, they all press in around you, forming a cocoon of tense anticipation. And just like that, the medieval childbirth journey has begun, with the midwife's steady hands guiding you into its unpredictable heart. You stay close as Ellen moves around the cramped room with the confidence of someone who could probably deliver a baby blindfolded. She gives you a quick glance, then nods toward the unsteady table shoved against the wall. "We need space," she says, and you immediately start shifting things out of the way. Bundles of linens, a chipped bowl, a half-finished spindle of yarn that absolutely no one has time for right now. Medieval homes aren't exactly sprawling, so every inch counts. The mother shifts on the mattress, letting out a soft gasp as another contraction begins its slow climb. Her forehead glistens, though it isn't hot in the room yet. That's stress, fear, exertion, take your pick. You offer a reassuring smile, though you secretly suspect she can see right through it. Ellen stands over her, assessing the situation with a practiced eye. She reaches for the small pouch hanging from her belt and pulls out a bundle of dried herbs, tying them above the bed with a fraying cord. "Keeps the air clean," she explains, "and the mind calm." You're not entirely convinced either claim is true, but the room does smell a bit more pleasant now, like someone tried to turn anxiety into potpourri. You crouch to check the fire, feeding it a few more pieces of broken timber, likely the remnants of old furniture or scavenged scrap, since medieval peasants weren't exactly swimming in firewood. As the flames brighten, the warm glow spreads across the cottage, revealing details you hadn't noticed. A faded tapestry, portraying what might be a saint, or might be someone's overly enthusiastic cousin. A small shelf lined with pottery that is definitely chipped but dearly loved, and a cradle tucked against the far wall, ready and waiting but looking almost too hopeful for the circumstances. When you turn back, Ellen is darkening the shutters again, ensuring no cracks remain. "Light should stay inside," she murmurs. "Birth invites wandering eyes." She means jealous spirits or witches or nosy neighbours. Honestly, any of them are possible. Medieval Europe had a superstition for every occasion, and childbirth was basically the Super Bowl of anxiety. Another contraction hits. The mother groans, clutching the sheet so tightly it threatens to tear. You kneel beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder, and gently remind her to breathe. She tries, though the breaths come out shaky, uneven. You rub her back as Ellen instructed earlier, offering pressure where it helps, or at least where it feels like you're doing something useful. One mainstream historical fact: it was extremely common for medieval women to give birth at home, surrounded by a midwife and a circle of female relatives or neighbours. Doctors were rarely involved unless things went terribly wrong, and even then, they often arrived too late or brought more trouble than help. Midwives, though, held a sacred blend of authority and suspicion. They were respected for their knowledge, and occasionally accused of witchcraft for the very same reason. Historians still argue whether the distrust came from their power or simply from the fact that men couldn't understand, let alone control, the world of women's healthcare. Ellen rummages through a small wooden chest by the bed. From it she pulls linens, a curved birthing knife, mostly ceremonial at this stage, and a curious object resembling a knotted piece of wool. She hands the wool to the mother. Grip this, she instructs. Squeeze during the pain. It'll keep your mind centered. You raise an eyebrow at the idea of a wool stress ball centuries before stress balls existed. But hey, innovation appears in strange forms. Ellen hands you a set of tasks spoken so quickly you momentarily question whether you misheard. Prepare the warm water. Fold linen squares. Clear a space near the foot of the bed. You jump into action, feeling less like a sleep-deprived spectator and more like someone caught in a medieval escape room challenge where the puzzle is simply survive the night. In the process, you discover a carved wooden token tucked beneath the mattress, a simple circle etched with swirling lines. When you show it to Ellen, she snatches it with a little too much urgency. Protection charm, she says. It stays under the mother, keeps her spirit anchored. She slips it back into place before you can ask for clarification. You decide not to question medieval spiritual physics. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, sending a soft shiver through the room. The mother stiffens at the sound, but Ellen waves it off. Storm's passing. Good omen. You remind yourself that this is the same woman who believes wool knots can calm a fraying soul, so her meteorological predictions might not be entirely reliable. Another contraction arrives, stronger this time. The mother cries out, the sound breaking through her attempt to stay composed. You hold her hand again, letting her crush your fingers in a way that would definitely require medical attention in the 21st century. She apologizes between breaths, which is absurd because the least you can offer during childbirth is your easily replaceable knuckles. Ellen moves closer, examining the mother with brisk efficiency. The room's too open, she mutters. Close ranks. Keep warmth in. You help her rearrange. Things again, shifting the bench closer, pulling a tapestry across a drafty corner, adjusting the bedding. You begin to realize that preparing the birth room isn't a single task. It's constant maintenance, a war against the cold, the chaos, and the sense that anything could unravel at a moment's notice. The mother's breaths slow briefly. She leans back, exhausted, sweat beading along her hairline. You wipe her forehead with a damp cloth, and she whispers a faint, "Thank you." It lands heavily, reminding you just how fragile this whole scenario is. You notice Ellen quietly reinforcing the bed's wooden frame with a wedge. Labors can shake a house apart, she says, half joking, half serious. She hands you a stool to place beside the mattress. You'll need this soon. You swallow, unsure if that's a promise or a warning. A quirky tidbit. The herbs hanging above the bed include one called motherwort. Medieval people believed it could soothe fear during childbirth and even strengthen the heart. Modern science says, sort of, maybe, not exactly. Historians still argue whether midwives understood subtle medicinal effects or simply trusted tradition because it worked often enough to keep using it. The fire crackles. The air thickens with heat, herbs, and tension. The mother's breathing turns rhythmic again, as though she's settling into the long road ahead. Ellen looks at you with a rare softness. Good, she says. The room is ready. Now we wait. And we work. You nod, feeling the gravity of the moment settle into your bones. The shutters are drawn, the herbs hung, the linens prepared, and the protective charms in place. The cottage becomes a cocoon, a tiny universe focused solely on guiding one life safely into another. And the night is only just beginning. The next hour, or what feels like an hour in a room where time melts into flickering firelight, settles into a slow rhythm of early labor. You kneel beside the mother again, watching her abdomen tighten as another contraction rolls through. Early labor isn't the dramatic shouting and chaos you see in movies. It's quieter, steadier, and somehow more unnerving, because everyone knows the real storm is still ahead. The mother breathes sharply, gripping the wool knot. Her knuckles pale, her jaw trembles. And though she tries to remain composed, her eyes dart to Ellen after each wave, searching for the midwife's reaction like it's the only reliable indicator of whether things are going well. Ellen's face stays calm, though her hands move with focused purpose. She checks the mother's pulse, then the tightness of her belly, then the rhythm of her breaths. Good, she murmurs, as if speaking to the room itself. She's opening. You have to remind yourself that in medieval terms, opening is an invisible miracle everyone hopes for, but no one can see without years of experience. There are no monitors, no Dopplers, no sterile gloves. Just intuition, touch, and candlelit assessments that rely heavily on trust. The contraction subsides, and the mother slumps against a pile of pillows. She looks at you, cheeks flushed, hair dampened against her temples. Is it supposed to hurt so much? This early? Her voice cracks. You hesitate because honestly, you're not the expert here, but Ellen answers before you can. Yes, first babies test patience. There's a wry curve in her tone, the kind that says she's said this line 1,000 times and it's always true. But early pains ebb. They come and go. You breathe in the spaces. A mainstream historical fact flashes through your mind. Many medieval women went through childbirth dozens of times, often beginning in their mid-teens. First labours were notoriously slow, and the risk of complications was highest during this stage. It's sobering to think about, especially in a world where the nearest doctor might be a full day's ride, away, assuming he even knows what he's doing. Another contraction approaches slowly, like a wave building far offshore. The mother tenses before it even hits. You squeeze her hand, bracing both your body and your nerves. She leans forward, groaning softly. Ellen moves behind her, massaging her lower back with practiced circles. That's good, Ellen whispers. Let it rise. Don't fight it. You wonder if she learned that phrase from her mentor, or if she just invented it one night. Either way, it sounds like something someone would write in an inspirational pamphlet if pamphlets existed. As the contraction peaks, the mother's breath stutters into quick, shallow gasps. You gently guide her hand to your shoulder so she can anchor herself. She grabs you like she's afraid of floating away. When the pain crests and begins to bleed into relief, she collapses back again, panting. Ellen hands her a clay cup filled with warm herbal brew. The mother sips reluctantly. Tastes like mud, she mutters. That means it works, Ellen replies dryly. You nearly laugh, but it comes out more like a nervous exhale. The room grows still again. The fire crackles. Shadows flicker. You can hear the faint drip of water outside, rain beginning to fall in the cold night. A soft rumble of distant thunder is almost comforting, like the sky quietly muttering supportive grumbles on your behalf. The mother shifts and winces. It feels like it's pulling, she says softly. That's how we know it's early. Ellen adjusts her position. The body is clearing the way. You nod, though you're not entirely sure what clearing the way physically entails. Some things in medieval childbirth are better left unvisualized. A quirky historical tidbit pops to mind. In some parts of Europe, women believed that tying knots during labor would tie up the birth. So everything from apron strings to shoelaces to hair ribbons had to be loosened or undone. It was symbolic, practical, psychological, take your pick. In fact, you notice the mother's hair is loosely braided and the ties on her shift hang open. You ask Ellen about it. Knots hold things closed, she says simply. We want everything to open. It's both literal and metaphorical in the most medieval way possible. As time creeps along, Ellen hands you a damp cloth. Stay with her, she says. Watch her breathing. Slow when it speeds, lift when it slows. It almost feels like you're conducting an orchestra, one where the only instrument is someone's lungs and the stakes are life and death. The next contraction is stronger, noticeably so. The mother clutches your arm with surprising strength. You wince but stay steady. She cries out, louder this time, and the sound echoes through the cottage beams. Outside, footsteps shuffle by. A neighbor? A relative? Someone pausing to listen? Ellen snaps her fingers at the shutters, as if sensing the intruding presence. Ignore it, she says. Let them gossip later. The contraction passes, slowly, painfully. The mother sinks into the mattress, exhausted. Her breaths come in jagged pieces, but she manages a weak smile. Thank you, she whispers again. You shake your head softly. You're doing all the work. Ellen overhears and snorts. No, she's doing the hard work. We're doing the sweaty, worried work. The fire pops again, loud, startling. You all flinch at once, then laugh about it. It's the first laugh of the night, and it feels strangely sacred. But the reprieve is brief. The mother's breathing shifts again, deeper, more rhythmic. The contractions are growing more frequent, and the quiet in the room feels heavier. denser. You brace yourself as you realize early labor is giving way to something stronger, more insistent, and the long night begins its slow, inevitable turn. The air in the cottage thickens as the contractions begin to settle into a harsher rhythm, no longer the soft edge of early labor, but something deeper, more insistent. The mother shifts uneasily on the mattress, bracing for the next wave. You can almost feel the tension radiating off her skin. It's like the room itself knows what's coming and is trying its best to shrink, cradle, or brace, maybe all three. Ellen notices the shift immediately. She tightens the knot of her apron, rolls her shoulders, and mutters, "Now the real work begins." She reaches for a pouch at her side and draws out a small bundle of herbs tied with red string. Without asking, she presses it into your hand. "Burn this." Slowly, not all at once. You blink. "What is it?" "Comfort," she says. "And distraction. And maybe nonsense." But nonsense helps. Then she adds, as if she's letting you in on a secret, especially for the ones watching. You smirk at that, because it feels painfully accurate. You carry the bundle to the hearth, dropping a pinch into the glowing embers. It releases a smoky scent, earthy, sharp, and vaguely floral. Maybe lavender, maybe mugwort, maybe something the medieval world just categorizes as, "I guess this calms people." The scent curls into the air, mixing with the heat, the sweat, and the iron smell of anticipation. The mother groans, clutching her belly. "It's stronger," she says, through gritted teeth. "Yes," Ellen replies, her tone gentle but blunt. "It will be." The body pulls harder now. You kneel beside the mother again, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. Her skin is warm, her breathing fast. "It hurts," she whispers. "I know," you say softly. "You're doing incredibly well." That's not comfort in the medical sense, but in medieval childbirth, comfort often meant the presence of another human willing to sit with you in the storm. No pain relief beyond herbs, no anesthesia, no epidural, just breathing, pressure, and sheer determination. And yes, this is where your modern brain kicks in and whispers, "Absolutely not. Couldn't do it. No thanks." A quick reality check. More than one medieval woman probably had that exact thought but pushed through because, well, there wasn't another option. Historians still argue whether some herbal mixtures actually dull pain or simply distract the mind with their potent smell. Ellen moves to the mother's lower back and presses firmly with her thumbs. You can see the mother's muscles shift under the midwife's hands. She grimaces, but her breathing steadies. "Good," Ellen says. "Good. Let it move through you." A strong contraction hits suddenly, violently. The mother cries out, grabbing your arm again or possibly trying to rip it from its socket. You grit your teeth and hold steady. "You're safe," you murmur, even though both of you know safety is fragile in this era. It's something spoken into existence, not guaranteed. The contraction stretches on. 10 seconds, 15, 20. It feels endless. The fire pops harshly again, startling you both. The storm outside rumbles like distant footsteps. When the tension finally releases, the mother collapses backward, breathless. You dab her forehead again. She looks at you with a weary, desperate kind of gratitude that makes your chest tighten. Ellen checks the linens, the bedding, the mother's posture. Nothing wasted, nothing random. "She's entering the grind," the midwife says, "where time stretches and the mind frays. You must help her stay here." She taps the mother's hand gently. "Stay with us. Don't go wandering. It's not metaphorical." Medieval people genuinely believed that extreme pain could loosen the soul from the body. The idea of wandering spirits during childbirth wasn't poetic, it was feared. Another contraction rises, and you get ready automatically hand-braced, cloth nearby, words forming even, before the mother begins to groan. She clutches your wrist like a lifeline as the pain crests, her breath breaking into gasps. Ellen leans close, speaking low and steady. You breathe through it. "Yes, yes, just like that. Good." And somehow the mother obeys, even though her face contorts with agony. You realize then why midwives were often treated with a blend of reverence and suspicion. Their voices could command a kind of miracle. Historians still argue whether their authority came from skill, ritual, or the simple fact that anyone had to guide the process. But Ellen's presence feels grounding, almost sacred. The contraction eases. The mother sobs breathlessly. "I can't. You already have," Ellen replies. You echo her softly. "You're not alone." A few minutes pass in uneasy silence. The fire dims, then flares. The herbs smolder. The room feels suspended in time, one heartbeat away from the next wave. Then comes something new. The mother shivers. Not from cold, she's warm, almost overheated. This is fear. You place a blanket near her shoulders, but she pushes it off. "I'm scared," she whispers. "What if something's wrong?" Ellen doesn't sugarcoat, but she doesn't frighten either. "Nothing's wrong yet," she says. "Pain isn't danger. Pain is work." You nod, grateful for her steadiness. Medieval women didn't fear childbirth because it hurt, they feared it because it killed. They feared infection, hemorrhage, breech births, and the thousand unknowns that lurked in the shadows. Even with experience, midwives couldn't predict everything. Even now, historians still debate how often complications were recognized too late. Another contraction builds. The mother groans, then cries. You brace her, whispering to breathe, breathe, breathe. Her hands tremble. Her jaw clenches. Ellen presses down on her back again, anchoring her body. The cottage walls seem to tighten around you all as the pain peaks, then slowly releases. The mother collapses again, utterly drained. You stay beside her. You breathe with her. You steady her trembling hands. And as the fire crackles, you realize this is still only the middle of early labor. The storm hasn't hit its full strength yet, but you're already in the thick of it. You barely notice when the door cracks open, only a sliver, only for a moment, but the draft it creates sends a ripple of cold across the room. Before you can even turn, Ellen snaps her head toward the entrance with the precision of someone who can sense disturbances purely through maternal rage energy. "Close it," she barks. The door shuts instantly. You hear quick footsteps, retreating, probably a neighbor or a curious relative who couldn't resist sneaking a peek. Medieval villages are many things, but subtle is not one of them. Still, once word spreads that labor has begun, women begin drifting toward the house with an almost ceremonial inevitability. It's tradition, it's duty. And though no one admits it, it's something like entertainment in a world with no phones, no theater, and no true privacy. Ellen exhales, smoothing her apron again. "Time to gather the circle," she murmurs. "No woman should labor alone." You nod, even though neither of you technically called them. The circle always knows. A soft knock interrupts your thoughts. Then another, and another 3, 4, 5 gentle taps from different heights and angles. Not frantic, not polite, just familiar. Women's knuckles on wood, signaling we're here. Ellen gestures toward the door. "Let them in." You open it slowly, letting in a trio of women wrapped in cloaks, faces lit by lantern glow. They enter quietly, almost reverently, shaking off the damp chill of the night. One carries a small bundle of cloth, one holds a jug of what might generously be called wine, and the third clutches a rosary so worn it looks like it's been prayed through 100 lifetimes. You close the door behind them, and for a moment, the cottage feels impossibly even smaller. The women move, as though following a script written by generations before them. One stokes the fire without being asked. Another begins folding linens automatically. Another kneels beside the mother and whispers soothing nothings in her ear, words that seem to melt into the room rather than pierce it. The mother, exhausted and trembling, musters a faint smile. "You came." "Of course," says the eldest, brushing a stray curl from the mother's forehead. "No one births alone." This phrase carries weight. History. Shared fear. Shared strength. You watch as the circle sets itself up around the mattress with practiced ease, forming something like a protective wall. Emotional, physical, spiritual, all at once. In medieval Europe, childbirth was a women's realm, guarded fiercely by those who had survived their own ordeals. Men stayed out. Always. They might pace outside, pray, curse, or drink. But this room, this heat, this raw human threshold, it belonged to women. And, apparently, to you tonight. A new contraction rises. The mother cries out, grabbing your hand with desperate instinct. The women close ranks around her instantly, one holding her shoulders, another lifting her hair away from her neck, another whispering, "Breathe, breathe, breathe, love." You feel yourself absorbed into the choreography, wiping her forehead, offering your arm to squeeze, steadying her back. You're not an outsider now. You're part of the circle, whether you meant to be or not. Ellen steps into the middle of the gathered women like a conductor approaching her orchestra. She checks the mother again, nodding at what she finds. "She's working well," she says. "Strong." One woman crosses herself. Another mutters a thanks to Saint Margaret, patroness of childbirth, a mainstream historical fact you remember reading somewhere. In some regions, women even wore tiny lead, tokens of the saint during labor, to help untie the womb. Historians still argue whether these rituals were genuinely believed or simply psychological comfort disguised as faith. The mother gasps as the contraction hits its peak. One of the younger women squeezes her hand, saying, "Let the pain pass through you. It doesn't stay. Easy for you to say." The mother grits out. Everyone chuckles softly, including her, because humor is one of the few comforts allowed in this era. Even pain makes room for a joke now and then. The contraction finally eases, leaving the mother sinking back onto the pillows. She looks around the circle with glassy eyes. "Thank you," she whispers to each of them, again and again. "Thank you. We're here," says one. "You're safe," says another. "We've all been where you are," says a third, though her tone carries a tremor that suggests her own memories run deep. The circle settles into supportive positions, someone massaging the mother's calves, someone fanning her with a bit of linen because the room has grown hot and heavy, someone murmuring prayers or encouragements. The air hums with shared energy, almost ritualistic. A quirky detail catches your eye. One woman wears a braided cord around her wrist, tied with tiny knots. She notices you looking and smiles. "Luck," she says. "Passed through every birth I've attended." "You believe it works?" you ask. She shrugs. "I've never lost a mother while wearing it." Then, after a beat, "I don't plan to test the reverse." Fair point. The mother's next contraction arrives sooner than expected. She stiffens, gasps, and folds forward with surprising strength. The circle reacts instantly, hands bracing, soothing, guiding. You help her lean into the pain, your arm behind her shoulders. Ellen steps forward again. "Steady. Good. Let it build. Let it carry you." You begin to realize that while the midwife leads, the circle sustains. Their presence fills the room, fortifies the mother, and even reinforces you. Their voices wrap around her like a blanket. Outside, someone calls softly. "Well, how is she?" Ellen growls at the door. "Go home." You nearly choke, trying not to laugh. Even the mother smiles weakly through her grimace. When the contraction passes, the circle relaxes in unison, as though tethered to the same breath. The mother leans back, exhausted but steadier, supported, surrounded. You look around at the glow of the women's faces, the rhythmic crackle of the fire, the storm murmuring outside, and the mother at the center of it all, and you understand something. This room isn't just a birthplace. It's a fortress. A living, breathing shield built from shared experience. Stubborn hope, superstition, sweat, and unwavering will. And the circle is only just beginning its work. The circle settles into a steady rhythm, hands busy, voices low, breaths sinking with each rise and fall of Di, the mother's contractions. But behind all the quiet teamwork, you notice something more subtle. Everyone keeps watching Ellen, not just casually, but with the kind of sharpened attention people reserve for someone who knows secrets you don't ask about directly. And honestly, she does. The midwife kneels beside the mother again, sliding her hands beneath the belly with delicate pressure. Her fingers move in small circles, then along the hips, then lower still. She's not guessing. She's reading the mother's body like a map only she can decipher. "How is she?" one of the women asks, barely above a whisper. Ellen doesn't look up. "She's making good progress," she says. "Still room for patience." You sense the unspoken addendum, but not enough room for foolishness. The mother groans as another contraction builds. You brace her again, your arm a familiar anchor. Ellen presses on her lower back, murmuring something words too soft to catch. Maybe a prayer, maybe reassurance, maybe a bit of both. You've heard plenty of modern takes on childbirth, but medieval midwives had their own entire lexicon, half medical, half mystical, and often indistinguishable. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. Midwives were one of the only groups in medieval society allowed to cross rigid social lines. They served peasants, nobles, clergy families, everyone. Their skills were too vital to ignore. Yet, ironically, they were also some of the most scrutinized. Historians still argue whether their reputations were built on genuine expertise, superstition, or the village's blind need to believe someone had control over the uncontrollable. Ellen shifts the mother's position again. Lean forward. Yes, like that. Her hands guide with confidence, not hesitation. Good, you're opening well. The mother hisses through her teeth. Feels wrong. Pain isn't wrong, Ellen says. Pain is the door. You blink. That's either incredibly wise or deeply unsettling. Maybe both. Another contraction grips the mother, rising so sharply that she nearly bends double. You wrap your arm around her shoulders, whispering encouragement as she buries her face against your sleeve. The circle closes in again, touches on her shoulders, her arms, her back, as though they're collectively holding her inside herself. But Ellen's hands remain the center of it all. She moves with deceptively gentle strength, pressing here, lifting there, adjusting the mother's hips by a fraction that somehow eases her breath. You watch, amazed. She has years of muscle memory carved into her palms, acquired through hundreds of births, long nights, near disasters, triumphs, and losses. A contraction passes. The mother sags forward, trembling. Ellen nods once, decisively. She's progressing faster now. One of the women glances sharply at her. Good faster or bad faster? Ellen's silence stretches for a beat too long. Then she says, good. For now. A ripple of unease passes through the room, not panic, just awareness. Medieval women know childbirth has its own moods. Sometimes things surge forward beautifully. Sometimes a sudden rush means trouble gathering on the horizon. You clear your throat gently. What exactly are you checking for? Ellen looks up at you with a gaze that's both patient and mildly amused. Position, depth, tension, the way the body yields. She wipes her hands on a cloth. You learn what feels right after a few decades. So, instinct? She snorts. Instinct needs practice. Otherwise it's just guessing with confidence. You can't help smiling. That sounds like half of medieval medicine. Exactly, she replies. A murmur of laughter breaks the tension. Then a sharp groan cuts through it. The mother grips your wrist with sudden fierceness. Her body arches. A deep sound, almost a growl, rumbles from her throat. You feel her nails dig into your skin. Ellen is instantly at her side. Good. Let it move through. Yes. Don't hold it back. Her hands press against the mother's hips, guiding her through the unbearable tightness, her voice soft but commanding. Breathe low. Don't rise to the pain. Let it pull down. You've never heard instructions like that. It's as if she's negotiating directly with the body, too firm to ignore, too calm to fear. The contraction peaks with brutal force. The mother cries out loud, raw, primal, and the circle steadies her with murmurs and touches. One woman places a hand on her chest. Another strokes her hair. A third whispers a soft prayer to Street Bridget. When the wave finally breaks, the mother collapses again, panting violently. Ellen wipes her brow. Strong, very strong. The baby's moving lower. One of the women exhales shakily. Is that good? It's exactly what should happen, Ellen says, though her tone carries a hint of calculation. You've been here long enough now to recognize her little tells. The way she glances at the fire, then the shutters, then the mother's feet. The way her hands never truly rest. The way she keeps rearranging small things, a pillow here, a linen twist there like she's preparing for problems she hopes won't come. A quirky tidbit pops into your mind. Some medieval midwives believed they could sense complications through subtle shifts in the mother's voice. Too shrill meant the baby was stuck. Too quiet meant the mother was weakening. Too calm that one they feared most. You listen carefully. The mother is anything but calm. Another contraction rises. She screams this time, grabbing your tunic so tightly you think a seam might rip. You brace her, murmuring to breathe, breathe, breathe. Ellen moves behind her again, applying pressure that seems to steady the mother's spiraling desperation. Her hands are unwavering, her voice grounding, her presence a lifeline. "This is the body working," she says gently. But you can tell from the flicker in her eyes that she's watching for the signs, the hidden clues only someone with years of apprenticeship can interpret. You hold the mother as she cries through the pain, your own breath sinking with hers, the room spinning with the heat and the smell of herbs and sweat and fear. And you begin to understand. Ellen isn't just guiding the birth. She's guarding a secret language, one spoken by muscles, breath, pain, and instinct, one she has spent her entire life learning to translate. And she's reading every syllable your friend's body speaks. The next contraction begins before anyone expects it, sharp, sudden, almost rude in its timing. The mother gasps, her whole body curling inward, as though trying to escape its own bones. You scramble to support her again, your arms sliding behind her back as she clings to you like a lifeline. Ellen watches closely, too closely. Her eyes narrow, not in fear, but in calculation. She places her hands on the mother's hips again, feeling for something invisible to everyone else in the room. Then she steps back, frowning ever so slightly. The circle goes still. You know enough by now to recognize that silence isn't good. "What is it?" one of the women asks, barely breathing the words. Ellen doesn't answer immediately. She lifts the mother's leg slightly, checking the angle. She presses along the lower abdomen with careful but firm movements. Her lips press into a line. Finally, she murmurs, "The labor is slowing." The mother whimpers. "But it hurts more." "It often does," Ellen says gently. "Pain doesn't always mean progress." You look between them, confused. "What do you mean by slowing?" Ellen stands, wiping her hands on her apron. The baby hasn't moved lower in the last few waves. The muscles are gripping, but not pushing. She glances toward the fire, thinking, "It happens." The body pauses, sometimes for hours. You blink. "Hours?" She nods. "Or days." You nearly choke. The mother moans, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I can't do this for days." "You won't have to," Ellen says quickly. "We'll help the body along." "Help it how, exactly?" You get your answer when Ellen reaches into her satchel again, this time pulling out a wooden vial, a sprig of herbs, and what looks like a long piece of braided flax. The circle murmurs, not fear, recognition. "Bring the stool," Ellen instructs. Two women obey instantly, pulling a sturdy birthing stool from the corner. It's smooth from years of pruset. Use two crescent-shaped openings carved into the seat, just wide enough to allow gravity to join the process. The mother glances at it and shakes her head. "No, no, not yet. I'm not ready." "You don't need to be ready," Ellen says. "You just need to sit." You help lift the mother as gently as possible. She gasps as she stands, her legs trembling, her breath quickening. The contractions haven't stopped. They've simply become less productive and more painful for it. Ellen hands her the braided flax. "Hold this. Pull if you need to." The mother grips it like a rope in a storm. A mainstream historical fact crosses your mind. Medieval women used a variety of techniques to stimulate a stalled labor, walking, rocking, leaning from rafters, drinking herbal concoctions, or sitting over warm stones. They didn't have Pitocin or modern interventions, so they relied on movement, gravity, and sometimes riskier tricks. Ellen kneels beside the stool and tilts her, head toward you. Stand in front of her. Let her lean on you. You step forward. The mother latches onto your forearms, gripping so tightly her knuckles turn chalk white. The circle gathers around, ready for the next wave. A contraction hits, hard. She screams, a raw, guttural sound ripped straight from the bottom of her lungs. She pulls on the flax, her whole body shaking. The stool creaks under her weight. You feel her nearly collapse forward, and you brace her, whispering encouragement you're not even sure she hears. Ellen murmurs, "Good. Let it pull downward. That's it. Let it slide." But when the contraction passes, Ellen's frown returns. Still nothing. The baby hasn't shifted. You see the worry flicker behind her eyes. Historians still argue whether midwives of this era truly recognized obstructed labor or simply reacted to its symptoms. But one thing is obvious now. Ellen knows this isn't normal progress. "We need more movement," she says suddenly. "Help her stand." "Stand? Now?" the mother cries. "I can't." "You can," Ellen insists, lifting gently but firmly. A few steps, just a few. The circle helps guide her. 3 women supporting her weight as her trembling legs try to remember how to function. She leans heavily against them, moaning through every small shift. You walk beside her, ready to catch her if she falters. The cottage is tiny, but to her, it might as well be a kingdom. Each step takes enormous willpower. She pauses, panting, relying entirely on the women surrounding her. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your mind. Some medieval midwives believed that circling the room counterclockwise, untied, stuck labours. Others swore that opening every locked chest, window latch, and knot in the house freed the baby's passage. Ellen seems to subscribe to the more practical version movement. Gravity, warmth. After a few slow steps, the mother gasps sharply and clutches her belly. Ellen moves instantly. "Yes, good. Hold her." The contraction hits mid-step, nearly knocking her to her knees. You catch her around the waist. The circle braces her arms and shoulders. She screams again, the sound trembling through your bones. But this time, Ellen's eyes widen. "There." She breathes. That's it. She's moving again. The mother collapses into your arms, sobbing from pain and relief. The women guide her back toward the stool, then the mattress, settling her gently. Ellen smiles softly just for a second. "The stall is broken," she whispers. But the night is far from over. Labor has resumed its slow, brutal march. And now comes the part where strength and fear walk hand in hand. The moment the mother is lowered back onto the mattress, you can feel the change in the air. The labor has momentum again, heavy, pulsing, insistent, and the room seems to tighten around it, as if the cottage itself is bracing for the next stage. Ellen wastes no time. She moves with renewed urgency, setting aside the herbs and warming cloths, and reaching instead for a small bundle wrapped in oiled linen. When she unwraps it, the firelight glints off polished wood, iron, and curved shapes that make your stomach tense. Tools. Not many, not large, but unmistakably medieval. One of the women lets out a low whistle. "You think we'll need those?" "Probably not," Ellen says, though her tone doesn't match her words. "But better to be ready." The mother cranes her neck weakly. "Tools?" Ellen presses a calming hand to her shoulder. "Just in case. Most births don't need them." You do not point out that most, in medieval childbirth, is doing a lot of heavy lifting. She spreads the items on a folded cloth. A small oiled knife, a curved bone hook, which you try very hard not to stare at, a pair of rudimentary tongs, a wooden scoop, and a thick cord for ligatures. None of them are meant for casual use. Each carries generations of whispered stories, some heroic, some tragic, all heavy. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Birthing tools did exist in the Middle Ages, but they were used very sparingly because improper use could kill both mother and baby. Midwives preferred hands, gravity, and positioning over anything metal. Historians still argue whether some tools were common knowledge or reserved for rare, desperate circumstances. And yet here they are. Ellen doesn't flinch. She's seen them all used before. You can tell from the way her fingers hover over each piece, assessing them like old acquaintances. Then she focuses on the mother again. "Let's try another position." You help shift her onto her side, slowly, carefully. She groans, clutches your arm, and swallows back a cry. Another contraction slams through her with the force of a breaking wave. The circle rallies instantly, hands stroking her hair, pressing her back, whispering encouragement. Ellen wedges a rolled blanket between the mother's knees to open. Her hips. "Good. Good. Let gravity work." The mother whimpers. "It hurts more." "That means it's right," Ellen says. "It means he's coming lower." "He?" one of the women repeats. Ellen barely nods. Feels like a broad crown. Likely a boy. The mother tries to laugh, but it breaks into a cry as another contraction rises. Her whole body tenses, shaking violently. You brace her shoulders, and whisper what little comfort you can muster, though your voice trembles too. The contraction peaks, and something shifts. A sound escapes the mother that chills the room to its core. Not a cry, not a scream, but a low, primal moan that signals a deeper stage of labor. Ellen's eyes snap up. She's entering transition. The circle inhales sharply. This is the edge, the brutal, disorienting threshold between dilation and pushing. Medieval women feared this stage for good reason. It was unpredictable, overwhelming, and often dangerous. Another contraction crashes in, barely giving her time to breathe. She convulses, clutching at the sheets, at your arm, at the air. Her breath hitches, panicking. "I can't," she gasps. I can't. Ellen leans in close. "You can. You will. This is the hardest part before the end." The mother sobs through clenched teeth. Her whole body curls around the pain, riding it, drowning in it. When the contraction finally releases, she collapses, sweat-soaked and trembling. Ellen checks her again quick, expert, focused. Then she reaches for the birthing stool. "No more lying down," she says. She's ready for the stool again. The mother shakes her head violently. "No, I can't stand. I can't." "You must," Ellen says. "He needs help. The stool will open the way." The circle helps lift her slowly, gently, each woman murmuring reassurance. You guide her by the arms, feeling her weight sag heavily against you. Her legs tremble with every step toward the stool. The moment she sits, her posture changes, hips open, spine bending, breath coming quicker. She grips the braided flax rope again, holding it like it's her last tether to the waking world. Another contraction slams through. This time, her cry echoes in the rafters. Ellen moves into position, crouching low, assessing the angle. Her hands press firmly on the mother's inner thighs. She watches closely, too closely, brow furrowed with concentration. The circle goes silent. Then Ellen says it. "He's crowning." You feel the entire room exhale in equal parts terror and relief. The mother screams long, broken, guttural. Her hands yank the rope so hard the fibers creak. You brace her shoulders, whispering a steady stream of words you barely remember speaking. Ellen leans forward. Good. Now listen to me. When I say stop, you stop. When I say push, you push." The mother nods frantically, tears streaming. Another contraction begins. "Push," Ellen commands. The mother bears down, with every shred of strength she has left, her face contorted, her breath ragged. The circle murmurs encouragement, their hands steadying her, grounding her. Ellen's voice deepens. "Good again." The mother pushes again, screaming through the pain. Ellen's expression sharpens. "Stop." The mother gasps, trembling violently. I can't." "You must," Ellen insists. "Breathe. Don't push." You rub her back, coaching her breath, desperate to help her hold still through the impossible pressure. This is where birth can tear dangerously. Ellen is preventing a disaster with sheer presence and precision. The contraction ends. The mother collapses forward, sobbing. Ellen nods. "One more like that. He's close." You brace yourself. Everyone in the room braces, because the next contraction is going to bring more than pain. It's going to bring a child into the world. The next contraction doesn't just rise, it erupts. You feel it before she even speaks. The way her whole body tenses under your hands, the way her fingers clamp down on your forearms, as if she's trying to fuse your bones to hers. Her breath catches, then bursts into a raw sound that has nothing polite or controlled left in it. "Now!" Ellen commands. "Push with it, not against it, go!" The mother bears down, every muscle tightening, face flushing dark with the effort. Her eyes squeeze shut, jaw clenched so hard you can almost hear her teeth grind. You brace her shoulders, feeling the tremor of her strength travel through your own arms. The circle closes in, hands on her back, her arms, her legs steadying, guiding, lending strength in all the ways they can. No one is standing idle. No one is looking away. This is the moment everything has been building toward. You risk a glance at Ellen. She's crouched low between the mother's knees, eyes sharp, hands poised but gentle, waiting to catch the first glimpse of the baby. Her expression is a strange mixture of calm and fierce focus, like someone balancing on a knife's edge and somehow pretending it's nothing. "Again!" she shouts. Don't waste the wave. The mother grunts, pushing harder, a strangled cry tearing from her throat. Sweat drips down her neck. Her hair clings to her skin. Her whole body shakes with the effort of trying to force new life into a world that hasn't exactly rolled out the red carpet. You feel her grip tighten so much, you're honestly surprised your arms are still attached. And then suddenly, there, Ellen breathes. The head. The room goes very, very still. The fire pops quietly. Someone's rosary beads click together in a trembling hand. One of the women starts to cry softly, without even realizing it. You can't see everything from where you're standing, but you know something has shifted. The atmosphere changes the way thunderstorms feel right before lightning hits. Only this time, the lightning is a new human being. Good. Girl, one of the older women whispers. He's coming, love. He's really coming. The mother sobs. It feels like I'm tearing open. That's because you are, Ellen says bluntly, but there's a softness beneath it. But only enough to let him through. You're strong. You were made for this. A mainstream historical fact brushes against your thoughts. Medieval people genuinely believed a woman's body was built for childbirth above everything else, spiritually, socially, physically. Her worth, her future, and often her survival depended on it. Historians still argue whether that belief gave women strength or trapped them inside impossible expectations. Standing here, watching her strain, it feels like a bit of both. Another contraction barrels in. The mother barely has time to breathe before she's pushing again, instinct taking over where willpower is running low. Her cry rips through the room like fabric tearing. Easy, Ellen calls out. Breathe, breathe now, push with the breath, not against it. Yes, like that. You feel the mother lean into you, her weight heavy and shaking. As she follows Ellen's voice like a rope in the dark, you murmur in her ear, half words that don't need full sentences. You've got this. It's okay. We're here. You're safe. Words that might not change the pain, but soften its edges. Then Ellen's tone shifts. Sharper, more urgent. Stop pushing. Just breathe. Let me work. The mother pants desperately, fighting the instinct to bear down. You can see the wild fear in her eyes, her body screaming to push, her mind trying to obey. You lend your breath to hers, inhaling and exhaling slowly, letting her mirror your pace. Her grip loosens just enough that you can feel circulation returning to your hands. Ellen? One of the women asks, voice trembling. Is he stuck? No, Ellen says, working with careful, subtle movements. He's just eager. We'll guide him out slowly. You hear the rustle of linen, the soft squelch of bodily effort you try not to focus on, the murmured prayers layered under Ellen's instructions. She supports the baby's head as it crowns, making sure the mother doesn't push so hard that tearing becomes catastrophic. In an era without proper stitches or antibiotics, that's the line between life and death. A quirky medieval belief floats into your mind. Some people thought a baby born too fast would grow impulsive or reckless, while one born very slowly would be stubborn but steady, as if the speed of labor wrote personality into their bones. Historians still argue whether that's charming folklore or just a way to make sense of something no one could control. Another wave builds relentless. Here it comes, Ellen warns. This one will bring him through. Are you ready? No, the mother sobs. Yes, Ellen replies. You are. Now push, the mother screams, a sound that starts high and breaks low, body bowing forward as she bears down with the last of her strength. You feel her shaking. Feel the stool creak beneath both your weights. Feel the entire room hold its breath. Again, Ellen commands. Don't stop now, one more. The mother gasps, pushes again, every muscle quivering. And then everything happens at once. You hear a wet, heavy slip. You hear Ellen's triumphant, their heads free. Good boy. Good. You hear several women begin crying outright, their composure washed away in an instant. The mother collapses against you, shaking so hard you worry she might faint. Her breath comes in ragged gasps, her eyes unfocused. Is he? She tries to ask. Not yet, Ellen says. Shoulders now. Stay with me. You realize, with a jolt, that the hardest moment isn't over. Once the head is out, the body still has to follow. In this vulnerable space, any hesitation can become dangerous. Another contraction. approaches mercifully close on the last one's heels. "Push again," Ellen says, voice firm. "Not as hard, just enough. Let me help him turn." The mother bears down, weaker now but still trying. Ellen guides with sure hands, rotating the tiny body, easing each shoulder past the narrowest point. The room fills with the sounds of weight and effort, and whispered prayers layered so thick they almost turn solid. "Good, good," Ellen breathes. "There he goes." Then, with a final slippery rush, the baby's body slides free into Ellen's hands. For a heartbeat, there is no sound, no cry, no breath, only the crackle of the fire and the pounding in your ears. You feel the mother tense against you, panic flooding her fragile exhaustion. "Is he? Ellen? Please?" "Quiet," Ellen orders, not unkindly. "Let me see him." You catch a glimpse of the baby in her arms, bluish, slick, startlingly small, and your own chest tightens, as though your lungs won't fully fill until his due. Ellen rubs his back firmly with a linen cloth, clearing his nose and mouth, murmuring something under her breath. A name? A prayer? A command? The circle leans in, holding the moment like a bowl of water, trembling not to spill. And then, a tiny, shocked cry cuts through the air. It's thin, wobbly, unpracticed, and absolutely perfect. The room breaks. Laughter, sobs, gasps, relief crashes over everyone at once. One woman drops to her knees, crossing herself over and over. Another presses her hands to her mouth, tears shining in her eyes. Someone whispers, "Thank God," like they've been holding the words in for hours. The mother crumples into your arms, her sobs turning from terror to stunned, overwhelming relief. "He's here," she whispers. "He's really here." "Yes," Ellen says, her voice softening in a way you haven't heard all night. "He's here. And he's loud." You laugh shakily as the baby cries again, stronger this time. Chaos isn't gone, there's still a mess to tend, blood to manage, a cord to cut, and a mother to stabilize in a world with far too few safety nets. But right now, in this cramped, smoky cottage, with your arms wrapped around a shaking, the exhausted woman and a midwife cradling a new life that just screamed its way into existence. You've reached the turning point. The baby is no longer a possibility. He is a person, and the night will never be the same. The baby's cries still stretch thin and reedy across the room, more like a startled kitten than a full-throated wail, but it's the most beautiful, relieving sound you've heard all night. The mother sinks into your arms, trembling, half laughing, half sobbing, her entire body collapsing into the strange hollowness that comes right after the intensity of pushing. Ellen holds the tiny newborn with a steadiness that feels ceremonial. His skin is slick and bluish in places, still coated with vernix that glistens in the firelight. She lifts him just a little, examining him from head to toe with a trained, critical eye. "Strong lungs," she murmurs. "Good color coming in." The mother reaches out a shaky hand. "Can I?" "In a moment," Ellen says gently. "We're not done yet." You feel the mother tense again, a different kind of fear creeping up through her exhaustion. She grips your sleeve, voice barely audible. "Is something wrong?" "No," Ellen says, but she's all business now. "There is more to do." One of the women steps closer with a small clay bowl of warm water. Another brings fresh linen. The circle hasn't disbanded in celebration. They know this stage is just as critical as the birth itself. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. In medieval childbirth, the moments after birth were often more dangerous than the birth itself. Hemorrhage, shock, or infection could strike quickly. Historians still argue whether medieval midwives understood postpartum physiology or simply reacted instinctively. But either way, this next phase demanded its own kind of focus. Ellen lays the baby onto a fresh cloth near the hearth, close enough for warmth but far enough to work freely. His legs kick weakly, his tiny fists open and close like he's trying to grab the air. "Good boy," she murmurs. "Let the world hear you." Then she reaches for the cord. It's still pulsing thick, bluish, warm under the fuzz, firelight. Attached firmly to the mother, still linking her to her son like a final tether. "We wait," Ellen says quietly. "Let the blood finish its journey." The mother slumps back, relief mixing with confusion. "Will it hurt?" "Not like before," Ellen says. "Just a pinch." The circle shifts into tasks. One woman holds the mother's hand, another fans her face gently with a cloth, a third wipes her arms and shoulders, which are trembling uncontrollably now that the major effort has passed. The mother whispers, "Is he healthy?" "He looked so small." "He is small," Ellen confirms. "Most babies are. But he's strong." She glances up with a rare softness. "The cry told us." You watch as Ellen checks the cord again, nods, then reaches for a thin strip of linen. She ties it around the cord, several inches from the baby's belly, looping it tightly with practiced precision. Then she ties another knot closer to the mother's side. Then she reaches for the small knife. Its edge glints in the firelight, oiled, clean enough for medieval standards, but still very much a knife. You swallow hard. The mother sees it and tenses. "Is it safe?" "As safe as anything tonight," Ellen replies honestly. "Hold her," she adds to you. You steady the mother's shoulder as she grips your arm again. With a sharp, confident movement, Ellen cuts the cord between the knots. The sound is strangely soft, more like slicing through firm fruit than rope. The baby lets out a startled squeak, but then resumes his thin cries, squirming against the linens. Ellen quickly wraps the severed end on his belly and hands him to one of the women to swaddle. "He needs warmth," she says. "Wrap him tightly, not too tight." You glance at the small bundle being made, and you can't help thinking he looks like a loaf of bread someone dropped off to cool. "He's so tiny," one of the younger women whispers. "Tiny ones grow strong," the older woman says firmly. "If they're loud enough." The baby squeaks again, which she takes as confirmation. Meanwhile, Ellen turns her attention back to the mother. "The hardest part is behind you," she says. "But we still need the afterbirth." The mother blinks, dazed. "More?" "Yes." Ellen places a steady hand on her belly. "Your body knows. Let it work." The circle shifts again, their posture turning serious. They help the mother adjust on the stool, then guide her back to the mattress carefully, gingerly. A quirky detail slips into your memory. Medieval women believed the afterbirth could cause misfortune if not handled properly. Some insisted it had to be buried under specific trees. Others believed it attracted evil spirits if left unattended. Some even dried parts for folk medicine. Historians still argue which customs were practical and which were superstition layered on panic. Right now, though, none of that matters. Another contraction, a gentler one, rolls through the mother's body. She gasps, but doesn't cry out. "Good," Ellen says. "That's right. Let it go." You support her shoulders as she leans forward. A warm gush follows, less dramatic, but unmistakable. Ellen catches the afterbirth in a bowl, her movements steady, almost reverent. "Healthy," she says simply. "Whole." The women exhale in relief. One crosses herself, another whispers thanks to St. Margaret. The mother collapses backward again, tears slipping down her temples. "Is he really okay?" You help her sit up slightly. And then the swaddled baby is placed into her arms. Her breath catches the second she sees him, his little scrunched face, his pinking skin, his tiny fists tucked tight against the linen. The world shrinks to the space between her trembling hands and his tiny body. She lets out a soft, broken sound. "I love him," she whispers. It's the purest thing you've heard all night. The baby wriggles, lets out a soft squeak, and then finally settles. The room falls quiet. The fire hums. The storm outside softens. Ellen watches mother and child with a small, satisfied smile, but her eyes stay sharp, alert. There's still more work to do, still dangers ahead. But for this moment, at least, a new life rests safely in the crook of his mother's arm. And the night, for the first time, begins to soften its grip. The room feels different now, softer around the edges, almost tender. The fire no longer seems like a threat waiting to ignite panic. Instead, it glows steadily, warming the tiny space where mother and child now cling to each other with an intensity that borders on sacred. The circle lets out the kind of breath everyone had been holding for hours, some leaning back against walls, others wiping their eyes. All of them worn but relieved. But Ellen doesn't relax, not even a little. She steps closer to the mother, her eyes sharp, scanning every detail, skin tone, breathing rhythm, posture, focus. She nods at the baby, satisfied with his soft whimpers and squirming. Then she kneels beside the mother again and presses her palm flat against her abdomen with gentle but firm pressure. The mother flinches. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong," Ellen says softly. "But we aren't finished." "Not yet." You feel tension ripple through the circle again, not terror, but the shared vigilance of women who have seen too many births sour after the baby was already safe. A mainstream historical fact flicks through your mind like a spark. Postpartum hemorrhage was one of the leading causes of maternal death in the medieval world. Without modern tools, midwives relied on pressure, herbs, warmth, and intuition to stop bleeding, and sometimes it wasn't enough. Historians still argue how much midwives truly understood about uterine atony or retained fragments. But they did know this. The minutes after birth were as dangerous as the birth itself. You shift closer, instinctively as Ellen presses down again, checking firmness, waiting for the uterus to begin its natural contraction. "She's soft," she murmurs. "We need her firmer than this." The mother grimaces, clutching the baby protectively. "It hurts." "It's supposed to," Ellen says gently. "That's what stops the bleeding." One of the older women moves behind the mother, rubbing her shoulders in slow circles. Another checks the fresh linens beneath her, looking for any sign of sudden blood loss. You notice a few crimson streaks, but nothing that sends the room into panic. Still, it's enough to remind you. The danger hasn't passed. Ellen reaches into her satchel and pulls out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She unties it, revealing a handful of herbs dark green, brittle, and sharp-smelling. "What's that?" you ask. "Motherwort and shepherd's purse," she replies. "To help the womb close." She crumbles a few leaves into warm water and hands the cup to the mother, who drinks shakily, though her eyes never leave her son's face. After a moment, she hands the cup back and curls around the baby again. Protective, fragile, you crouch beside them. "You're doing well," you tell her. She smiles weakly. "I don't feel well." "That's normal," one of the women says quietly. "Birth empties you out." "Sometimes literally," another adds, earning a few exhausted chuckles. Ellen presses the mother's belly again. This time she nods. "Better." She's tightening. The circle relaxes again, but only a fraction. Then the mother winces sharply. "Burning," she whispers. "It burns." Ellen's head snaps up. "Where?" The mother gestures weakly to her lower belly. "Inside. Like fire." The circle stiffens. Women share looks that are unmistakably worried. This isn't normal post-birth discomfort. This is something sharper. Ellen presses again, slower now. "Tell me what you feel." The mother's breath trembles, pressure, and burning, and something else. Your heart drops. "What kind of something?" She shakes her head helplessly. "I don't know. Like it's pulling backward." Ellen nods, her expression unreadable. "Hold the baby for a moment." The mother hesitates, but one of the women gently lifts the newborn into her own arms, swaddling him carefully. The sudden absence of the baby leaves the mother exposed and shivering. Ellen moves her closer to the edge of the mattress. "Help me," she says to you. You brace her shoulders as Ellen checks beneath the linens. The fire crackles loudly, the only sound in the sudden hush. The women lean in, breath held, fear held. Ellen's eyes narrow. Then she relaxes, letting out a long exhale. She's torn, but not badly. "We can manage this." The mother sobs with relief. The entire circle slumps simultaneously, shoulders dropping. Ellen retrieves a small jar filled with something that looks like thick brown paste. "Mallow root and honey," she explains, "to soothe and to keep infection at bay." A quirky historical tidbit resurfaces. Medieval midwives used honey not only for healing, but because they believed it protected against corruption of the flesh. Good honey, especially, was prized for closing wounds. Historians still argue how effective these mixtures were, but honey's natural antibacterial properties weren't entirely superstition. Ellen applies the salve with careful hands, murmuring reassurance the whole time. The mother cries a bit, but the cries ease into trembling breaths. "You'll heal," Ellen promises. "Slowly. But you will heal." She finishes, then wraps the mother gently in fresh linens. The women help her sit up again, propping her with pillows. "Bring him back," the mother whispers. The newborn is placed into her arms once more. The moment he touches her chest, he settles, tiny breaths matching her own shaky ones. She bends her head to kiss the top of induration, his swaddled skull, tears falling silently into the linen. Outside, the wind has softened. The storm passes into quiet drizzle against the shutters. Inside, for the first time all night, the room feels warm rather than hot, humming rather than frantic. Ellen sits back on her heels, watching mother and child with a soft, satisfied sigh. But she stays alert. She always stays alert. And you understand why. Because this moment, the fragile, tear-stained lull between danger and recovery, is when medieval mothers were most at risk. But tonight, at least so far, the worst has been steered away. The mother is breathing, the baby is breathing, and the circle is still here, guarding them both. The baby settles in the mother's arms with a faint, fluttery sigh, one of those soft, newborn sounds that seems to ripple outward and calm the entire room. His tiny fingers flex against the linen, brushing her skin with movements so small they look accidental, like his body is exploring the idea of being alive for the very first time. The mother stares down at him with a strange mixture of shock and enchantment, as if she's still convincing herself he's real, and not some fever dream produced by hours of pain and panic. Her tears come steadily now, not frantic, not scared, but slow and warm, dripping onto the baby's swaddling. "He's beautiful," one of the women whispers. "He looks like her sister," another insists. "No," says the oldest woman. "He has his father's ears." Everyone leans in to inspect the shape of the ears, because medieval childbirth isn't just about survival, it's about immediate, unfiltered gossip about whose features landed where. The baby yawns, almost comically. Half the women gasp as if he's performed a miracle. Ellen, however, doesn't join the fuss. She moves with quiet determination, gathering the used linens and setting aside the bowl with the afterbirth. Her face remains focused. She hasn't let her guard down, truly not, while there is still cleaning, warming, blessing, and protecting to do. "You two," she says, pointing at a pair of the women. "Warm water, not too hot, and bring the clean bundle." You watch them hurry to the hearth, boiling and cooling water in a rhythm that looks well rehearsed. Ellen takes the baby carefully, giving the mother a reassuring look. "Just for a moment. I'll bring him right back." The mother nods reluctantly, her fingers lingering on the swaddling before letting go. You can tell it feels unnatural to her to let him leave her arms even for a few breaths, but it's necessary. Ellen carries the baby to the firelit corner, where a basin awaits. She unwraps him partially, revealing the tiny limbs curled inward like a frog. His skin is mottled and slightly reddish now, the color returning after the ordeal, but he looks alert in that sleepy newborn way. "Let's clean him lightly," Ellen murmurs. "He doesn't need a full bath tonight." A mainstream historical fact slips into your mind. Medieval infants were often swaddled tightly, believed to shape their limbs and prevent them from becoming crooked. They were also seldom washed fully right after birth. Instead, the focus was on warming, wrapping, and spiritually protecting them. Historians still argue whether swaddling helped or hindered development, but it was nearly universal. Ellen dips a cloth into the warm water and wipes the baby's head, face, neck, and limbs with gentle strokes. The room watches with breathless reverence, as though they're witnessing a baptism of life, not just a bath. The baby squirms, letting out a few soft squeaks. "He's strong," one woman whispers. "Strong lungs," says another. "Thank God," adds a third. You step closer, marveling at the tiny form. The baby's fingers, no larger than matchsticks, curl around Ellen's little finger for a moment, gripping with a strength that surprises you. Even newborns hold. "On," Ellen says, noticing your stare. Helps them feel the world. Then comes a quirky detail that catches your interest. After cleaning, she rubs a tiny dab of warmed oil along the baby's temples, chest, and feet. "What's that for?" you ask. "To keep the spirits away," she says simply. You wait for a joke that never comes. In medieval belief, a newborn was considered spiritually vulnerable, open to all sorts of influences until properly blessed, baptized, or protected. Many midwives used oil, herbs, or gestures to seal the infant against unseen forces. Whether symbolic or believed literally, the ritual is repeated with absolute seriousness. Once the cleansing is done, Ellen re-swaddles the baby expertly, wrapping him tightly in soft linens, folding them around his small form until he resembles a content, slightly squirmy parcel. "Ready," she says, carrying him back to the mother. The mother reaches for him the moment he returns, pulling him close to her chest. She inhales his scent, cradling him as if she's afraid he might dissolve if she loosens her grip. Ellen gives her a nod. He's healthy. Good breath. Good color. The mother cries again, not from fear this time, but from the immeasurable relief of hearing that verdict. "Hold him close," Ellen adds. "Let him feel your skin. It warms him better than fire." You help adjust a blanket around the mother and baby, keeping them snug. The baby wiggles, tiny nose nuzzling instinctively for comfort. "He's trying to find the breast," one of the women says knowingly. The mother looks down, surprised. "Already?" "He knows what to do," says the elder woman. "Babies are born wiser than we think." Ellen gives a faint, approving grunt as the baby begins to root, mouth open, searching. The mother helps guide him, wincing slightly but clearly overwhelmed by the tiny movements of her son. When he finally latches, the room erupts in soft, relieved murmurs as, though this too confirms he's truly alive, truly thriving. While the mother feeds him, Ellen turns to the bowl containing the afterbirth. Her expression remains focused, almost ritualistic. She covers it with linen and ties it with twine. "What will you do with that?" you ask quietly. "Bury it," she replies, as though this is obvious. "It must be returned to the earth. Whole." Another woman nods. "If the dogs get it, the child grows wild. Or mischievous," adds someone else. "Or cursed." You blink. "That's a lot of outcomes." Ellen smirks faintly. "Better safe than sorry." Historians still argue whether these rituals were symbolic or believed literally, but in a world where life is fragile and death walks close, even symbolic acts carry heavy weight. The baby unlatches with a sleepy sigh. The mother adjusts him on her chest, smiling weakly, eyes fluttering with exhaustion. "You did beautifully," you whisper to her. She leans her head back, tears slipping from her temples again. "I survived." "You did more than that," you say gently. "You brought someone new into the world." The baby is breathing softly, rhythmically, bundled against her heartbeat. And for the first time since the night began, the cottage feels safe. For now, the cottage is quieter now, quieter, but not calm. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the air still trembles from everything it held. The mother lies back against the pillows, the baby sleeping on her chest in tiny, steady breaths. The fire pops softly, the herbs above the hearth sway with the draught, and everyone watches the mother with the same intensity as before, because the danger has merely shifted, not vanished. Ellen, ever vigilant, kneels beside the bowl containing the placenta, the afterbirth covered in linen and tied securely. The weight of it in her hands seems almost ceremonial. She lifts it with a reverence you did not expect for something your modern brain labels biological waste. To medieval eyes, though, it is absolutely not waste. One of the women steps closer. "Do you want me to bury it?" "No," Ellen says firmly. "Not tonight. The ground is too wet. It must go deep, or it will attract animals." She glances toward the shuttered window where the rain has softened into a misty drizzle. "We keep it safe until morning." The mother watches tiredly from the bed. "Is that important?" Ellen meets her gaze. "It is. Your child's health depends on it." A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Medieval cultures held a wide variety of beliefs about the placenta. In many communities, it was considered spiritually linked to the baby. If it was lost, stolen, eaten by animals, or mishandled, people believed it could cause harm, illness, misfortune, or even a shortened life. Historians still argue whether these rituals served practical purposes, like sanitation or preventing scavengers from lingering near homes, or were purely superstition. Tonight, Ellen treats it like sacred responsibility. She sets the covered bowl on a high shelf, out of reach of the hearth, and wraps it with a cloth to keep it from curious hands, or worse, curious animals. Only after it is secure does she allow herself a small exhale. With that done, she turns her attention back to the mother. "You're not finished yet," Ellen says gently. "We must check for fever." One of the women dips a cloth in cool water and presses it against the mother's neck and forehead. The mother sighs, exhausted. "How do you feel?" you ask quietly. "Like my insides have been kicked," she whispers, "and stretched, and rearranged." A weak laugh ripples through the circle. Humor is softer now, gentler. Everyone is tired. Ellen presses along the mother's abdomen again, feeling for any irregular lumps. "No clots," she says. "Good." Then her tone sharpens. "We must keep her warm." The circle springs into motion without being told. A cloak is draped over her legs. A wool shawl wraps around her shoulders. The fire is fed again with the last dry scraps of wood. Then Ellen reaches for a small clay jar. And this is the moment things shift from medical to mystical. She opens the jar, releasing a sharp, earthy scent. Inside is a thick, tarry paste the color of dark resin. "What is that?" you ask, blinking. "Elven salve," says one woman. "Protection balm," says another. "Makes evil choke," whispers a third. Ellen smirks. "It's just pine resin, ash, and honey." She lowers her voice. "But people behave better when they believe in magic." You grin at that, despite the fatigue creeping into your bones. She dabs a small amount of the paste onto her finger and makes a faint symbol on the mother's forehead. The mother closes her eyes, murmuring a quiet prayer. Then Ellen turns to the baby and gently marks his tiny brow as well. This is not baptism, no priest is present, and no holy water, but it is a ritual of protection. Medieval communities had dozens of such rites, all aimed at keeping the fragile new life safe from spirits, illness, curses, or ill intent. One quirky historical tidbit. In some regions, people placed iron objects under a baby's cradle, believing iron repelled malevolent forces. In others, they hung garlic or sprigs of rosemary. You glance around and spot a nail hammered discreetly above the doorway. Apparently, this household uses the iron method. With both mother and child marked, Ellen sits back. Good. Now nothing wandering in the night can trouble them. You shiver slightly, because she says it with complete confidence, no hint of metaphor. The circle murmurs prayers of agreement. Then Ellen picks up a bundle of dried sage and thyme, tied together with twine. She lights the tip from the hearth. Smoke rises immediately, sharp, aromatic, almost startlingly pungent. "What's that for?" you ask. "To cleanse the space," Ellen says. Birth opens the veil. We close it again. The women nod solemnly, stepping back to let her pass. She moves around the room slowly, sweeping the smoke into corners, along walls, over the bed, and around the cradle. The smell fills the cottage, earthy and a little bitter, but strangely comforting. The mother watches, half awake. "Will it help?" "With luck," Ellen says. "Or with magic," one woman adds. "Or with the smell," jokes another. The laughter is tired but real. Once the smoke has thinned, Ellen returns to the mother's side. "Drink this." She hands her a warm herbal brew. "What's in it?" you ask. "Yarrow, willow bark, and something to help her sleep." The mother drinks with trembling hands. Her eyelids droop almost immediately. "Let her rest," Ellen whispers. The circle begins cleaning the room quietly, gathering linens, tidying the hearth, wiping surfaces with warm water. You help where you can, trying not to disturb the mother or the baby sleeping against her. One of the younger women whispers to you, "Don't let the fire die. She needs the warmth." And the light keeps shadows honest. You're not entirely sure if she means shadows in the poetic sense or the literal supernatural sense, and you do not ask. As you help stoke the fire, you glance at the mother again. She's asleep finally, her face peaceful, though pale. The baby stirs against her chest, tiny breaths puffing softly into the wool shawl. The room feels warmer now, cleaner, soothed. The worst of the night is behind you, though danger still lingers at the edges. Fever could rise, bleeding could return, milk might not come, infection could take root. But for now, Mother and child are held in warmth, in ritual, in community, and the afterbirth waits on its shelf, guarded by cloth and belief, ready to be buried with the rising sun. You step outside for a moment, not far, just beyond the threshold, because the cottage has grown impossibly warm, and you need a breath of night air that isn't carrying herbs, smoke, and the thick scent of labor. The drizzle has stopped, leaving behind that damp, earthy smell that always follows a midnight rain. The clouds hang low, glowing faintly with the moon behind them, as if the sky itself is too tired to shine properly. You stretch your back, trying to ease the stiffness that set in from hours of bracing, lifting, holding, and whispering encouragement you didn't know you had in you. And that's when you hear it, pacing, boots scraping at the wet ground, a low voice muttering under its breath, another louder voice whispering a nervous prayer. You turn and find a cluster of men milling about near the side of the cottage, half hidden in the shadows of the thatched roof. They flinch when they see you, as if you've caught them committing some unspeakable crime, rather than pacing in circles like anxious livestock. One of them, tall, stooped, hands trembling, steps forward. "Is she?" His voice cracks. He clears his throat and tries again. "Is she alive?" You blink. Yes, both of them. A wave of relief hits them so visibly you almost brace yourself for the splash. Several men sag against the wall. One crosses himself so fast, it's a blur of fingers. Another sits right down in the mud, head in his hands, murmuring, "Thank God, thank God, thank God." You scan their faces and realize these aren't just random villagers. They're the father, brothers, uncles, cousins, men connected by blood, fear, and the medieval tradition that bars them from the birthing room entirely. The father steps closer. His knees tremble. His tunic is soaked from rain and probably from him kneeling on the wet earth more times than he'll ever admit. "Can I see him?" he asks, voice tight. You shake your head gently. "Not yet. She's resting. And the midwife is still working." He nods, swallowing hard, eyes shining in the dim light. He's trying to look composed, but he's unraveling in slow motion. Men might not be allowed inside, but they feel the danger just as sharply, maybe worse, because they can do nothing but wait. He drags a hand across his face. I could hear her. Hours of it. His breath hitches. It sounded like... He doesn't finish. You don't make him. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Medieval men weren't excluded from childbirth because they didn't care. They were barred because birth was considered women's territory emotionally, spiritually, culturally. Men weren't meant to see it. Many believed the act itself was too sacred or too terrifying. Historians still argue which explanation mattered more, probably both. Another man steps closer, a younger brother or cousin, judging by the jawline they share. He leans in conspiratorially. "Is it true she screamed so loud the hens stopped laying?" You blink. "The hens?" He nods gravely. "My wife swears it." You try to respond politely. The hens will be fine. Are you sure?" He presses. "They're nervous birds." You nod solemnly because, honestly, this feels very important to him. Another man, arms crossed tightly over his chest, mutters, "I told him to stop, talking about hens. Night like this, you should be praying, not discussing poultry." The brother huffs. "Praying makes me more nervous." "That's because you're praying wrong." Someone else grumbles from the shadows. Arguments break out in hushed, frantic tones, half superstition, half stress, all masculine confusion, trying to process fear without admitting they're afraid. You're about to step inside again when you hear a sharp crack. One of the men has punched the side of the cottage in frustration. "Easy," another hisses. "That's a wall, not a demon." "I needed to hit something," the man growls. You didn't hear her cries. The father rounds on him. "Don't say that." His voice shakes. "Don't you dare." Silence falls again. The weight of it hangs on every man present. One finally whispers, "We've lost too many. My sister, then my cousin, then Marta last spring." You glance toward the shuttered window. Inside, the mother sleeps with her newborn against her chest. Here, outside, the memory of death lingers like smoke. The father's jaw tightens. "But she lived," he says, voice cracking again. "My wife lived." He looks up at you. "Right?" "Yes," you say firmly. She's alive. She's strong. She made it through. He nods several times, too overwhelmed to speak. Then his face shifts, fear replaced by something softer, gentler, awestruck. I'm a father, he whispers, as if the words feel unreal. I'm a father. One of the men claps him on the back, almost knocking him over. You'll be a good one. Or a terrible one, another jokes weakly. But you'll try your best. Laughter thin, shaky ripples through the group. They cling to it like a rope. You lean against the cottage wall, listening as the men process the night in their own way through superstition. Jokes, sideways comments, awkward confessions, and long, trembling breaths. One man says, "If it were me in there, I'd faint." You fainted when you cut your finger. Another shoots back. That was a deep cut. It was a bread knife, and the bread was stale. Their bickering grows louder, tension bleeding out through humor, as medieval men so often did, never directly, never sincerely, but sideways, awkward, stumbling. You exhale softly, reminded that childbirth belongs to women inside the room, but its terror and hope ripple far beyond the walls. You turn toward the door. "Go on," the father says quietly. "Check on her. Tell her I'm here, please." You nod. Inside awaits warmth, ritual, and recovery. Outside waits fear, love, and cold mud. And between them, you stand carrying news from one world to the other. When you slip back inside, the warmth hits you like a wall. A wave of heat, smoke, and the lingering scent of herbs that clings to everything in the cottage. The air feels thick, almost heavy, as though the room itself is worn out from the night's ordeal. The fire crackles softly, throwing gentle light across the women, moving in slow, practiced patterns. Their earlier adrenaline has faded. Now they move like people carrying fragile glass. The mother stirs in the bed, shifting slightly as the baby sleeps curled against her chest. You notice how pale she is now, paler than before. Her lips look dry, her breaths shallow. Ellen notices too. Her gaze sharpens. She rises from her low stool beside the hearth and approaches the bed with quiet but unmistakable urgency. "Wake her," she says to you. You kneel beside the mother and touch her shoulder gently. "Hey, can you hear me?" She opens her eyes, but they're glassy, unfocused. Her pupils lag, slow to respond. Her voice comes out thin. "I'm tired." Something in your stomach tightens. "She's too tired," one of the women murmurs. "No," Ellen corrects. "She's losing strength." And just like that, the calm of the room fractures. The circle closes in once again, hands hovering, breath held. The women who were cleaning stop mid-motion. The ones who were resting stand up immediately, straight-backed, eyes alert. "What's wrong?" you ask, fearing you already know. Ellen presses a firm hand over the mother's lower abdomen. The mother gasps sharply, part pain, part surprise. Ellen's brow furrows. She's bleeding more than she should. The mother's head lolls slightly. "I feel cold," she whispers. The women exchange looks fearful, knowing looks. A mainstream historical fact hits you like a blow. Postpartum hemorrhage was a leading cause of maternal death in the medieval period. Without modern interventions, excessive bleeding was terrifyingly common. Midwives fought it with pressure, herbs, and prayers. But often, it was a battle against time itself. Historians still argue whether midwives truly recognized early signs of hemorrhage or relied on instinct. Either way, instincts meant everything. Ellen snaps into action. "Get me the shepherd's purse." One woman rushes to the herbs hanging by the door, pulling down a bundle of tiny white-flowered stalks. Another brings warm water. A third lifts the baby from the mother's chest to keep him safe, cradling him against her own body. You help support the mother as Ellen mixes the herbs into a strong brew. She lifts the woman's head and helps her drink, though half of it spills down her chin. "Come on," Ellen whispers. "Stay with us." The mother's eyelids flutter. "Everything's spinning." "I know," Ellen says. "That's why you must not close your eyes." The mother tries, but her head tilts again, her breathing too slow, too shallow. Ellen presses her palm harder against the mother's belly, hard enough that the mother groans in pain. "Why are you?" you begin. "To help the womb close." Ellen snaps. Or she will bleed out. You swallow hard. The mother's voice cracks. Please, stop. I can't, Ellen says softly but firmly. This is what keeps you alive. The women gather closer. One murmurs frantic prayers. One holds a cloth under the mother to monitor the bleeding. One rubs her arms, trying to warm her cold skin. Another holds the baby tight, whispering softly, Your mama's strong. She is strong. Ellen glances at you. Keep her awake. Talk to her. You take the mother's hand, cold, damp, trembling. Stay with me, you whisper. Don't drift off. Your son is here. He's warm. He's safe. He needs you. She tries to smile, but it comes out broken. I feel like I'm sinking. You're not sinking, you tell her. You're right here, with us, with him. Ellen finishes the herbal mixture and now applies a paste directly to the mother's skin. Yarrow and honey, crushed into a sticky mass. This will help, she murmurs. It must help. One of the women steps forward with a question, trembling at her lips. Should we fetch Father Bertram? No, Ellen snaps sharply. Not yet. Should we fetch the doctor? Another asks, voice shaking. Ellen's jaw tightens. He would take too long. And he'd likely kill her with his bleeding bowls. You grimace. A painful, quirky historical tidbit. Medieval physicians often treated postpartum complications with bloodletting, exactly the opposite of what the mother needs right now. Midwives knew this. Doctors insisted anyway. Help me lift her hips, Ellen instructs. You and two others obey, raising the mother slightly so Ellen's hands can press deeper, firmer. The mother cries out weakly. Ellen whispers to her, voice trembling with compassion she rarely displays openly. I know, love. I know. Just a little more. And then, like a candle, guttering and catching again, the bleeding slows. Ellen waits. Waits. Then exhales. The kind of breath a person holds only when they're staring down death. It's stopping, she says softly. She's turning the corner. The circle collapses into relief. Silent, trembling, exhausted. She's safe? You ask carefully. For now, Ellen replies. But she'll need watching all night. The mother curls instinctively toward the warmth of the shawl. One woman wraps around her. Her eyes flutter open, more present, more aware. Where's my baby? He's right here. The woman holding him says, stepping forward. Ellen nods. Give him back. The baby is gently placed on the mother's chest again. He nuzzles immediately, instinct guiding him even through the chaos. The mother's shaking hand rises to cradle his tiny back. A small, quiet smile forms on her lips. You feel your own breath loosen after what felt like holding it for far too long. Ellen watches them with fierce tenderness. Then she turns to you. Sit with her, she instructs. If she starts to fade again, wake me. You nod, because you're not just a helper anymore. You're part of the vigil, part of the circle, part of the fragile line holding life steady on the other side of birth. The danger hasn't passed completely, but for now, for this moment, mother and child breathe together in the warm cocoon of the cottage. And Ellen keeps her silent watch, ready for whatever the night might dare next. The cottage has quieted into that strange, heavy stillness that only settles after a crisis when everyone is afraid to move too quickly, breathe too loudly, or trust the calm that's finally arrived. You sit beside the mother, watching her chest rise and fall with slow, careful breaths. The baby is curled against her again, his tiny cheek pressed to her skin, his breathing soft and rhythmic, but exhaustion radiates from her like heat. Not the normal kind, the deeply unsettling kind that follows blood loss and terror. Ellen knows it too. You can see it in the way she hovers, not openly, not nervously, just close enough that she could cross the space between them in 2 steps. The other women, sensing the shift in the room, begin the long, hushed vigil. They move quietly, softly, with deliberate reverence refolding linens, tending the fire, exchanging glances that say everything words could ruin. A baby sleeping is soothing. A mother sleeping after nearly bleeding out is terrifying. Ellen leans near you. Don't let her sleep too deeply, she whispers. Not for an hour or 2. She needs to stay here with us. Because of the bleeding? You ask. She nods once. And fever. And shock. and spirits that wander when a mother slips too far into exhaustion. Her tone is half clinical, half mystical. Stay awake with her. So you sit by the bed and gently brush the hair from the mother's forehead. Her eyelids droop heavily, but when you speak softly, she responds murmurs, small nods, the faint squeeze of your hand. But every time she starts to drift too deeply, you nudge her back. Not harshly, just enough to keep her tethered. Outside, the storm has faded into silence. The shutters rattle lightly in a faint wind, and the damp smell of earth and rain seeps into the room. You can hear the men's muffled voices outside, still talking, still worrying. Inside, the women work in near ritualistic synchrony. One sweeps the floor with a straw, broom. Another checks the bowl of warm water. A third hums a thin tune, a lullaby, maybe, for both mother and child. You watch Ellen as she kneels by the fire. She grinds herbs with calm, steady motions, adding bits of dried root to a mortar. She works with such slow focus that you realize she's keeping herself awake too. Midwives almost never sleep during these nights. They watch, wait, listen. They don't trust the quiet any more than you do. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. Medieval midwives often stayed for hours, sometimes days after a birth, guarding mother and child against complications. They knew postpartum dangers intimately. They had no modern medicine, but they had observation, instinct, and endurance. Historians still argue how widespread formal training was versus apprenticeships. But one thing is certain, their vigilance saved countless lives. The mother stirs, startled by a small ache in her abdomen. You steady her gently. You're all right. You're safe. She looks up at you with swollen eyes. I still feel cold. You tuck the blanket around her more tightly. We'll keep the fire strong. Ellen looks over sharply. Cold can be a sign of weakness returning. Keep rubbing her arms. You obey, warming her as best you can. Her skin is clammy but slowly gaining color again. One of the older women approaches with a cup of warm broth, whispering, "Drink," slowly. The mother sips, wincing, but the heat seems to help. After a few mouthfuls, she relaxes slightly, her shoulders easing. Then, without warning, the baby stirs. He whimpers a soft, uncertain little sound and shifts against her chest, his tiny lips rooting instinctively. Ellen approaches. Let him nurse again. It helps your body too. The mother nods weakly. She uncovers herself just enough, guiding the baby with trembling fingers. He latches quickly, instinct guiding him more than skill. You see her wince at the initial discomfort, but she bears it bravely, stroking his back with a tenderness so deep it nearly brings you to tears. One of the women murmurs, "A nursing baby pulls the womb tight, helps it close." Ellen nods. Exactly. It's nature's own remedy. The circle watches, hopeful. You can feel the tension loosening, like a tightly wound rope releasing notch by notch. But the night isn't done with you yet. The fire cracks loudly, so loud that everyone jumps. The mother gasps sharply. Her eyes widen. Her breathing stutters. You lean closer. What is it? She clutches your hand. Pain, she whispers. Deep pain. Instantly, Ellen is at her side. Where? The mother presses a hand to her lower belly. There. Sharp. Ellen checks the firmness, pressing gently, then harder. You see her frown just slightly. Is she bleeding again? One woman asks nervously. No, Ellen says, though uncertainty flickers behind her eyes. But the womb may be tightening too, quickly. That can happen? You ask. In some labors, Ellen replies quietly, the womb forgets to ease. A quirky, unsettling historical tidbit slips into your mind. Medieval midwives believed the womb had its own personality. Temperamental, sometimes stubborn, sometimes restless. They said it could wander, seize, or tighten out of spite. Historians still argue whether these beliefs came from interpreting symptoms or simply trying to explain the inexplicable. The mother groans again. Ellen presses warm cloths over her abdomen. Breathe with me. Don't tense. Let the pain settle. You help hold the compress in place, watching her chest rise and fall unevenly. After a few long minutes, the tension begins to ease. Little by little, her breathing steadies. Good, Ellen whispers. She's settling. You exhale shakily, your pulse still pounding. How long until she's truly safe? Ellen doesn't answer immediately. She tends the fire. She wipes her hands. She checks the linens under the mother again. Then she looks at you and says, quietly, "Until dawn." The words sink into you like a stone. The cabin hums with low voices, rustling cloth, and the soft suckling sounds of the baby still nursing. The mother drifts in and out of wakefulness, her eyelids fluttering like a candle's flame. You stay by her side. You hold her hand. You watch the baby breathe. You watch the fire burn. You listen to Ellen mutter prayers and instructions in the same breath, and together you keep the fragile line of life from slipping in the long, uncertain hours of the medieval night. The hours after midnight pass in that strange, drifting way only exhausted bodies understand, slow, syrup-thick and hazy, yet alert in all the places that matter. You sit beside the mother, your hand still wrapped around hers, as her breathing grows steadier. Not strong yet, but steadier. The baby sleeps now, milk-drunk and warm, curled against her skin like a small ember she's determined to keep alive. The women have settled into a quiet rhythm. One tends the fire, stirring the embers with gentle taps. Another replaces damp cloths with warm ones. A third kneads dough in a corner, preparing bread for the coming morning, because life, astonishingly, hasn't stopped just because a miracle and a near death occurred in the same room. The hush feels sacred, but it's fragile, always fragile. Ellen moves toward the mother again, checking her pulse, pressing her abdomen, watching the linens for any sign of fresh blood. You see the tension in her shoulders easing little by little, but she doesn't let herself relax fully. Not yet. She's doing well, Ellen murmurs, stronger with each hour. The mother opens her eyes at the sound of her voice. Her gaze is clearer now, more present. I feel lighter, she whispers. Still tired, but lighter. That's the healing starting, Ellen says. Your womb is closing. Your strength will return slowly. You squeeze the mother's hand gently. You're doing beautifully. She smiles faintly. I feel like I'm floating. She pauses. Not in a bad way. In a soft way. Let her drift, one woman says. She's earned a soft world for a few hours. The baby stirs, letting out a small, squeaky whimper. The mother instantly shifts, protective instinct rising with a strength her body shouldn't logically have yet. She tucks the blanket around him, kissing his tiny forehead. That tenderness, quiet, instinctive, overwhelming, fills the room like warm light. You lean closer. How does it feel? You whisper. She smiles. Like he's part of my breath. You feel your chest tighten at the simplicity of it. The baby wiggles again, searching, rooting. Ellen nods toward him. Let him nurse if he wants. It helps both of you. The mother adjusts herself, guiding the baby to her breast. He latches easier this time, his tiny body relaxing almost immediately. The mother winces briefly but then sighs, the pain giving way to a strange, dreamy peace. This is the moment medieval women clung to the first bonding, when the terror fades and the fragile miracle becomes real. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Because infant mortality was so high, these early hours were considered crucial. Women were encouraged to hold, nurse, and warm the baby immediately to give it the best possible start. Some communities believed that the first hours determined the child's fate, health, or even personality. Historians still argue how much of this was practical wisdom versus cultural belief, but either way, these moments mattered deeply. One of the younger women, sitting cross-legged near the fire, begins humming a lullaby. It's soft, thread-thin, carrying a lull of calm through the room. You don't know the words, but the melody feels ancient, older than this cottage, older than the village, older than any one generation. The mother's eyes droop. She looks at you. Is it safe if I sleep? Yes, Ellen answers quietly before you can speak, but lightly. We'll watch you. The mother gives a tiny nod, exhaustion finally settling over her like a warm blanket. Her breath slow as her eyes close. You glance at Ellen. Should I wake her? Only if she sinks too deep, she says. But she's stable now. Let her drift a little. Then, noticing your relief, she adds softly, You did well by her. You blink. I didn't do much. You did enough, Ellen replies. People survive with enough. The fire glows gold against the walls, the herbs above the hearth swaying in lazy arcs with each movement of air. Outside, the men's whispers have faded into exhausted silence. The night feels gentler now, like a beast that has eaten and grown calm. A quirky historical tidbit floats into your mind. Some medieval women believed that if a baby slept peacefully after birth, it meant he'd grow into a calm, thoughtful man. But if he squealed or wriggled constantly, he'd become reckless or unruly. One of the women near you seems to subscribe to this belief, because you hear her whisper proudly, "Look at him, he'll be a thinker, that one." Or a quiet troublemaker, another says. "That's worse," someone mutters, earning soft laughter. The gentle conversation swirls around you, soothing even the edges of your own exhaustion. You lean closer to the mother, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the delicate flutter of the baby's lashes, the perfect way he nestles against her skin, like a puzzle piece designed for her alone. For the first time tonight, you let yourself relax just a little, because the danger truly has begun to recede. Minutes slip by, maybe hours. Time blurs again. Then Ellen places a hand on your shoulder. "I'll take over for a while. Rest your eyes." You shake your head. "I'm all right." She studies you. "You've been awake as long as we have. Sit back. We'll wake you if anything changes." One of the older women gestures toward a small bench by the wall. "Go," she whispers. "Even midwives don't stand forever." You nod finally and sink onto the bench. The wood creaks under your weight, but it feels almost comfortable after the long night. Your eyes slip half closed as the fire warms your face. You don't fully sleep, just drift, floating in that same soft place the mother described. Not awake, not dreaming, resting in the warm hum of the room. You hear the baby breathe, the mother sigh. Ellen whispers something under her breath. The fire shift, and through it all, the steady rhythm of life continues fragile, but present. Tonight has been brutal, terrifying, sacred, and now, finally, you feel the night loosening its grip, just enough for you to breathe. Dawn teases the horizon long before the first light touches the shutters, an almost imperceptible thinning of the darkness, the way the air shifts when night begins to lose its grip. Inside the cottage, the fire has burned down to a warm heap of embers, glowing like quiet coals beneath the grate. The women have dimmed their movements to near silence. Their shadows drift across the walls in slow, gentle arcs, like guardians humming in sleep. You blink yourself back into full awareness. You don't remember falling asleep, not really, only hovering in that in-between place where your head droops, your neck aches, and your eyes snap open every time the fire cracks. The others haven't slept either. Not truly. Medieval childbirth demands a kind of wakefulness that sinks into the bones. Ellen stands near the hearth, crushing herbs with the heel of her palm. Her hair is loose now, strands falling around her face in a silver-touched halo. She looks exhausted but alert, always alert. "How is she?" you ask quietly. "Better," Ellen murmurs, not turning from her task. "Weak, but steady." You exhale softly and move toward the bed. The mother is awake barely. Her eyes flutter open when she senses movement. She looks like someone who has lived 3 lifetimes in one night. Pale, hollow-cheeked, hair plastered to her forehead, but alive. And then you see him. The baby lies on her chest again, wrapped snugly in clean linens, his little face turned toward her heartbeat. His tiny mouth opens and closes in sleepy, instinctive motions. His breathing is soft and steady. "Good morning," you whisper. She smiles faintly. "Is it morning?" Her voice is thin but steadier than before. "Nearly." The baby squirms, makes a small snuffling sound, and she strokes his cheek with one trembling finger. "He found me again," she whispers. "He always finds me." "That's what babies do," one of the women says as she approaches, smiling tiredly. "They know the scent of the world that made them." The baby begins to root, nudging toward the mother's skin, and Ellen steps forward immediately. "Let him nurse." The mother nods, shifting slightly. You help her adjust the blankets and position the baby, who latches with surprising confidence for someone who only just arrived on Earth. The room exhales in unison. "Good," Ellen says softly. "Very good." A mainstream historical fact flickers in your mind. Medieval baptism often happened within hours or days of birth, depending on customs, fear of infant mortality, and the availability of a priest. Some places rushed baptism if the baby seemed weak. Historians still argue whether this urgency was more spiritual or practical. Baptism meant belonging, protection, and, in many communities, naming. As if sensing your thoughts, one of the women says, "We should call for the priest soon. The baby needs his name." "Not yet," Ellen says. "Let the mother hold him first. Let her know him." You nod. Has she chosen a name already? The mother opens her eyes again, dreamlike. "I thought of a few, but I want to see him awake." She glances at the sleeping face nestled against her breast. "He came into the world fighting. I want a name that carries strength." The older woman nods approvingly. "Strong names bring strong fates. Or stubborn ones," someone mutters with a smirk. A ripple of tired laughter softens the tension. The baby unlatches and sighs a delicate little sound that seems impossibly pure after the night you've lived through. The mother holds him close, pressing her lips to the soft crown of his head. "He smells like milk," she murmurs. "And hope," one of the women whispers. You feel something warm twist in your chest. Ellen approaches again, gently touching the mother's wrist. "We should clean him one more time before the priest arrives." "Is he dirty already?" you ask. "He's new," Ellen replies. "New things need tending." So you help them prepare a small bowl of warm water. The women gather around as Ellen brings the baby to the hearth once more, unwrapping him with careful fingers. He squirms but doesn't cry, just blinks with sleepy surprise at being moved. "There you are," Ellen murmurs. "Still small, still stubborn." She cleans him with soft cloths, wiping away dried milk at his cheeks, damp curls at his neck, and tiny specks of birth residue clinging in the folds of his skin. She moves slowly, reverently, as if handling a relic rather than a newborn. The women watch with the same hush they gave the moment he first cried. Ellen finishes by rubbing a trace of warmed oil along his temples again. "For protection?" you ask. She nods. "The world is waking. Spirits shift at dawn." A quirky, fascinating tidbit comes to mind. Medieval communities believed dawn was a vulnerable time for new infants, when the spirit world thinned and passing souls wandered. Protective rituals were common: iron near the cradle, herbs near the bed, whispered blessings. Even the placement of the baby's head toward the east or west held meaning in certain regions. Ellen swaddles him again and hands him back to the mother, who cradles him like he's made of starlight. The circle stays close, offering soft words, warm cloths, and quiet prayers. Then comes a tentative knock at the door. 3 slow taps. The women exchange glances. "That'll be the father," someone whispers. You open the door a crack. The father stands there in the faint grey glow of early morning, eyes swollen from crying, hands shaking, mud streaked on his clothes. He looks like he spent the night wrestling heaven itself. Can I see them?" he asks, voice cracking. You step aside. He enters slowly, reverently, almost afraid to breathe. The mother lifts her head when she feels him near. Her smile trembles. "We made him," she whispers. The father looks at his son, their son, with awe so raw it's almost painful. He doesn't touch him at first, just stares, as if one wrong move might break the moment. Then, with Ellen's quiet nod of permission, he reaches out and places one trembling finger against the baby's tiny hand. The baby grabs it. The father breaks. He crumples into quiet sobs, kneeling beside the bed, forehead pressed against his wife's arm. The mother strokes his hair gently. "We're here," she whispers. "We're all here." You swallow hard. This room, this tiny, smoky, cramped little cottage, feels suddenly enormous, holy, like a sacred chamber where life has insisted on itself despite every danger. Ellen glances at you, her voice barely above a breath. "This," she whispers, "is why we endure the night." And for the first time since labor began, she allows herself to sit, really sit, shoulders slumping, eyes softening, a small, weary smile touching her lips. The long night is ending. A new life has begun. And for the first time, the room belongs not to fear but to beginnings. The morning light finally pushes its way through the shutters, faint at first, then warming into thin golden stripes across the cottage walls. It's a soft light, the kind that belongs to new beginnings, and for the first time since the mother's first contraction, the world outside feels like it's moving at a gentle pace again. Birds begin their timid morning calls. A rooster crows in that indignant, half-asleep way roosters always do. Somewhere in the village, a door creaks open. Inside the cottage, though, the shift from night to day feels monumental. It changes everything. It softens the shadows, warms the air, and turns the mother's pale face into something almost glowing. She lifts her head a little, gazing down at the baby asleep across her chest. His tiny fingers twitch as though he's dreaming of warmth, or milk, or simply existing. You sit close, rubbing sleep from your eyes, trying to blink the stiffness from your body. You're exhausted, yes, but also strangely energized. This little cocoon of life, humility, and survival has wrapped itself around you. The father hasn't stopped watching them. He hasn't moved more than an inch from his place beside the bed. His eyes stay locked on his son, as though blinking might break the fragile spell of having two people he loves still breathing in the morning. The circle of women begins to shift roles now. Their urgency from the night has softened into something more domestic, familiar, even cheerful. One kneads dough with renewed vigor. Another stirs a pot of warm porridge. A third sweeps the floor with a rhythm that matches the soft morning hum. Then Ellen, rising from her short, stiff rest on a stool, claps her hands lightly. "Time to tend her wounds," she says. The father tenses, as if fearing something new. The mother turns her head, still exhausted but more aware than before. You help reposition her carefully, supporting her back as the women bolster pillows behind her. She winces not with the terror from earlier, but with the honest pain of a body trying to knit itself back together. Ellen checks her abdomen again, presses, listens, watches. You've begun to recognize the patterns of her movements, quick but careful, clinical but compassionate. "You're healing," she says. "Slower than I'd like, but you're healing." The mother lets out a shaky breath. "I still feel sore everywhere." "That's expected," Ellen replies. "Your body did the work of a lifetime last night." A mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind. Postpartum recovery in medieval times was incredibly demanding. Women were expected to return to their daily tasks far too soon, cooking, cleaning, tending animals, carrying water. Some were back on their feet within days, even hours. But many communities gave new mothers a short period called lying in, allowing them to rest, heal, and bond with their child. Historians still argue how widespread this custom was. Some claim it was common. Others say it was a luxury only some could afford. It looks like this household believes in giving her some version of rest. "Thank God." Ellen hands you a warm cloth. "Help me clean her." You nod, working beside her. The mother flinches with each touch, but she doesn't cry out. She's endured so much already that this feels like an ache, not a crisis. One of the women prepares another herbal poultice, a mixture of comfrey, mallow, and rosewater. "For healing," she explains, handing it to Ellen. "And for comfort." Ellen applies it gently. The mother gasps at the initial sting, then relaxes as the coolness spreads. "Thank you," she whispers. The women exchange soft smiles. Then you lift your eyes and notice something: a handmade cradle pushed neatly against the wall. It's small, carved from rough wood, with simple but loving craftsmanship. A little bundle of dried lavender hangs from one post. Someone must have prepared it, earlier, maybe even weeks before, hoping, praying the baby would need it. "Is that for him?" you ask. The father nods, eyes softening. "I built it this winter. I wasn't sure but I wanted to be ready." The mother's eyes shine with fresh tears. "It's beautiful." "Ellen," one woman says. "Should we lay him in it now?" Ellen shakes her head. "Not yet. Let him feel her warmth a little longer. His bones are still settling." You blink. "Settling." She nods. "Babies are born soft. They firm with the sun." You decide not to ask whether that's literal or symbolic. A quirky historical tidbit slides into your thoughts. Medieval people believed newborns needed tight swaddling to help their limbs grow straight. They also thought sunlight strengthened the bones and pushed away illnesses. They weren't entirely wrong. Vitamin D really does help, but they didn't know the science behind it. Still, they created rituals around morning light, cradle positioning, and protective herbs hung near the bed. The baby stirs again, opening his eyes briefly dark, unfocused, but undeniably alive. The mother lifts him tenderly. "He looks like he's thinking," she whispers. "He's thinking about eating," one woman mutters, earning chuckles. Suddenly there's a soft knock at the door. 3 taps. Measured. Calm. Familiar. The father freezes. The priest. Ellen wipes her hands and stands. Time for the naming. The energy in the room shifts. Everyone straightens. This isn't just a rite, it's protection, identity, belonging. In a world where life is fragile, a name is armor. Ellen nods for you to open the door. You pull it open gently. Father Bertram stands outside, wrapped in a thick cloak, breath misting in the morning air. He carries a small silver flask, a cloth, and a tiny wooden cross. He steps inside with quiet reverence. "I heard the cries," he says, smiling. "A healthy sound." The father gestures to the bed. "They're here, both of them." The priest approaches, eyes softening. "A blessing indeed." He kneels beside the mother. "Have you chosen a name?" The mother looks at the baby, then at the father. He nods, wordless. She whispers the name softly, reverently. You hear it and feel something warm settle in your chest. It's perfect, strong, gentle. Ellen raises a brow approvingly. "A good name." The priest smiles. "Then let us welcome him into this world." The circle gathers close. The father kneels beside the bed. The mother clutches her son to her chest. The priest raises the cross, and, in the soft morning light, a new life receives its name, its first identity, its first blessing, woven into the warm, fragile world that nearly lost both mother and child only hours before. It's not loud, it's not grand, it's not cinematic, but it's real, it's small, it's human, and it's everything. The naming is finished, but the air in the cottage still holds the glow of it, a soft hum of reverence that lingers long after the priest tucks away his flask and wooden cross. Even the fire seems to burn with quieter purpose now, its embers steady and warm. The baby now, with a name that belongs fully to him, sleeps in the crook of his mother's arm. Tiny mouth slack, tiny chest rising and falling with the slow, peaceful rhythm of someone who has survived his first and most dangerous journey. The priest murmurs a final blessing, traces a small cross in the air, and nods to the parents. "May he grow straight and true," he says, "and may you find strength for the road ahead." The father clasps his hands together. "Thank you." The priest leaves quietly, and the door closes behind him with a gentle thud. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then Ellen lets out a breath so deep it seems to deflate her entire spine. She sits down, really sits on the stool beside the bed, the exhaustion finally settling across her, shoulders like a heavy shawl. "You made it," she tells the mother, voice low and full. "You both did." The mother smiles, thin but genuine. "I didn't think I would." "You did," Ellen repeats. "That's what matters." The father places a hand on his wife's cheek. She leans into it, eyelids fluttering. He touches the baby next, gently, like he's afraid the child might vanish if handled too boldly. "He's warm," the father whispers. "He's alive," the mother answers. And in that exchange lies the entire miracle of the last 12 hours. You sit nearby, knees aching, spine stiff, but heart strangely light. You've watched something that medieval life distilled down to its rawest truth. That birth, the simple act of beginning, is never simple at all. It demands blood, sweat, fear, prayer, and everything in between. It demands a village. It demands strength that you didn't know people's bodies could hold. Ellen rises once more to check the linens, beneath the mother. Her movements, though slow now, are still vigilant. "No fresh bleeding," she murmurs. "Good. Will she be all right?" you ask softly. Ellen nods. "She's past the worst. But she will need rest, and broth, and warmth, and she mustn't lift anything heavier than him for days." One of the women snorts. Aye, and the sun mustn't rise in the west. Ellen gives her a pointed glare. We'll make sure she has help. The women nod in agreement firmly, without hesitation. In medieval life, this is what community looks like. Not niceties, not compliments, just the absolute certainty that you will show up for each other when the barley must be harvested, when someone breaks a bone, when a roof caves in, or when a woman nearly bleeds out, bringing new life into the world. The mother curls around her baby, adjusting the blanket. Will I always feel this sore? Not always, Ellen says, but give yourself time. You add gently, your body did more in one night than most people do in a year. She smiles, faint but grateful. The father rises. I should fetch water. And would. And he gestures helplessly, overwhelmed by the sheer number of things he feels he should be doing. Ellen waves him off. First, eat. One of the women places a bowl of porridge in his hands so firmly he nearly spills it. The others laugh. He takes the bowl, flustered but grateful, and begins to eat as if remembering only now what hunger feels like. You stand and stretch your bones, crack loudly enough to make one of the women wince in sympathy. You should rest, she says. You're as pale as she was. I'm fine. You insist. She snorts. That's what every fool says after a long night. Sit before you fall. You obey. She's right, you're tired in the way only long, fearful nights can make you tired. But it's a good tired, the kind that comes from work that mattered. The mother speaks again, voice soft. Will the pain fade? In time, Ellen answers. Childbirth shapes you. Not just your body, your life. The room quiets at that. You glance around and realize, she's right. This night, this experience ripples outward, beyond the cottage, beyond the crying and pushing, beyond blood and herbs and fear. It shapes inheritance, future harvests, marriages, family lines. How many hands will gather crops in 20 years? Who will carry the family name? Who will survive the winter? And in a world like this, every birth shapes the very bones of the community. The baby stirs again, yawning an impossibly tiny yawn. The mother smiles and strokes his cheek, humming something soft and instinctive. He's perfect, she whispers. He's here. You answer. That's perfection enough. Ellen begins gathering her tools, cleaning the knife, folding the cloths, not because her work is done, but because she knows the next family will need her soon enough. The women prepare to leave, each offering a final touch. A stroke of the mother's hair, a pat on her shoulder, a kiss on the baby's brow for luck. The father stands straighter now, strength returning with relief. Thank you, he murmurs to each of them. All of you. Finally, Ellen turns to you. You did well. You did everything, you reply. She shakes her head. No one delivers a child alone. And that simple truth settles over you in a way you won't forget. The morning grows brighter, the fire softens, the cottage fills with quiet warmth instead of fear. Mother and child will rest now. The road ahead is long, but they are here, alive, together. And in the medieval world, that is nothing short of a triumph. The cottage grows still as the morning unfolds, settling into the kind of gentle hush that drapes itself across a room after long hours of strain and whispered hope. The fire burns low now, more ember than flame, casting a warm, even glow that softens every edge and turns each shadow into something calm rather than ominous. Outside, the first birds have begun their quiet songs, their rhythms slow and wandering, as if they too are waking carefully into the day. The mother lies back against her pillows, breathing steadily at last. Her baby, small and warm and already dreaming of a world beyond the walls of the cottage, rests against her chest without a single worry. You watch the rise and fall of their breaths, two rhythms, once uncertain, now joining into something steady, almost melodic. Ellen moves softly through the room, her steps unhurried now. She gathers the last of her tools, folds the linens with tender precision, and glances back at the new family with a look that blends relief, pride, and a tired, well-earned peace. The other women murmur their goodbyes, their voices gentle, drifting like warm air as they slip outside into the pale morning light. And slowly, the world around you quiets further. The fire crackles less. The wind softens. Even the cottage itself seems to exhale. You breathe in the scent of herbs, warm wood, and a night that has finally loosened its grip. Let yourself settle here for a moment. Let the warmth of the room soften your thoughts, letting every sound stretch out, slower and quieter, until you feel your own body easing into stillness. This night was long, but peaceful mornings always follow, and now you can drift gently into rest.